Bring this meeting of the Veterinary Medical Board will reconvene, and Anne Marie will establish a quorum.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Present.
Dr. Nunez.
Here.
Dr. Nolan.
Here.
Dr. Sullivan.
Here.
Jennifer Laredo.
Here.
Kathy Bowler.
Here.
Judy Mancuso.
Here.
Alana Yanez.
Here.
Thank you.
And at this time, we'll allow any member of the public to introduce themselves if they wish to do so.
Nancy Ehrlich, California RVT Association.
Grant Miller, CVMA.
Valerie Fenstermaker, CVMA.
Diane Sokoloff, Attorney General's Office.
Candace Rainey, Veterinary Medical Board.
Ethan Mathis, VetMed.
Thank you. And agenda number 19, we're lucky today to have the new department head for the Consumer Affairs Department here, Dean Griffillo, and I think he'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, President Waterhouse, for that brief introduction. Thank you, Executive Officer Del Munayo, for allowing me to briefly address this board. Such a great pleasure to be here. I'm now 4 months into the job as Director of DCA, so I will entertain questions towards the ends of my remarks, but do please keep them to 4-month threshold questions. So nice to see you, Board Member Bowler. I know that we've been able to interact in different iterations previous to this. What I'm alluding to is previous to coming to the DCA 4 months ago, my career in Sacramento has primarily been in the legislature. I first got to Sacramento in '04 working for an assembly member in the East Bay, former majority leader Alberto Tirico. I was with him for about 4 years, and then an opportunity to be his chief of staff for a LA-based assembly member out of Long Beach, Gardena, Assembly Member Warren Furutani, and then an opportunity to work as a governmental advocate / lobbyist for the California Medical Association presented itself. So I was there for about 3 years. I never swore off returning to the Capitol as leg staff, but if I did, I wanted to make sure that it was for the right person, the right reasons, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it was icing on the cake when in 2012 the great voters of the 18th Assembly District voted the first Filipino American ever elected to the California State Legislature with current Assembly Member Rob Bonta. He asked if I was interested to come back to the building, and as I mentioned, it was icing on the cake with the historic nature of him being the first Filipino American ever elected to the Assembly. I have an affinity for my ethnic community as well, and so I was with him for 4 years, and it wasn't part of my plan in 2017 to come to DCA. But as I learned about, its mission, its issues, the topics that it touches upon, as you folks may very well know, 39 programs under DCA. Unbeknownst to me, in 2011, when I was at the Medical Association, I was the liaison to the medical board. My point is, unbeknownst to me, that was one of the 39 entities under DCA. Similarly, I was very, very glad and appreciate the opportunity to be a commissioner on the Athletic Commission for, obviously, the California State Athletic Commission. Didn't know that was one of the entities under DCA. As you can tell, I was very well versed in all the iterations of DCA and all the different programs, and so ultimately my career as legislative staff, my opportunities of being a gubernatorial appointee as a commissioner, and then my work as liaison to the medical board, so many confluences of consumer protections. I've been able to work on legislation specific to consumer protections as well, and so as I mentioned, as I learned more about this opportunity, obviously decided to go for it. And since being here for 4 months, I've done my darndest to try to make sure that I've reconnected with a lot of the folks that I've had existing relationships in the legislature. Didn't want anyone to, not that they would, didn't want to give anyone the opportunity to say I was taking advantage of my existing relationship, so I did my due diligence with introducing myself to the folks primarily that see B&P issues, DCA issues, so the leaders of both houses, chairs of both committees, members of both committees, And that's obviously a function of time, getting around to get on folks' calendars. Similarly, since then, I've tried to really focus on doing what I'm doing here today. Trying to get to all the different boards, bureaus, those that obviously that run it, and I believe it's rooted in me as an organizer previous to being in the legislative staff. The only way you're really truly going to be able to get a good grasp of the uniqueness of the vaccine issues that you folks face day in, day out is if I do a house visit and hopefully have a longer conversation. I know time is constrained today where I'm not going to necessarily be able to do that. But I assure you, this isn't going to be the first and only time that we're going to be able to interact. I want to be able to get a better understanding of the vaccine issues that you face. I'm always going to be one that's going to roll up my sleeves and do the hard work in order to creatively problem solve. I think I've established that track record as staff, hoping to bring that approach, not necessarily unique approach, but I just wanted to share with you that in my time as staff, the hundreds of different vaccine issues that we're faced with, I believe that the best way to creatively problem solve is to bring in as many different perspectives on an issue. Obviously take that deliberative, robust process, and when it comes to decision-making time, you're going to have confidence in that decision given that deliberative and robust process. So it may not be the quickest way to arrive at a decision, but I think, in my view, it's the best way to have real confidence in the ultimate decision. So again, I won't take too much of your time. Appreciate you all allowing me to be here and introduce myself. So looking forward to having further conversations, and I'm happy to entertain 4-month threshold questions.
Judy.
So, well, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
And it sounds like you've had a very lengthy, fulfilling career that's led you here. I was appointed 7 years ago by Speaker Perez, which I've been honored to serve for all these years. And I've seen a big transition with the Veterinary Medical Board.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came on, no staff, no money, no resources. And it was a very long, hard road to get to where we are today, that we're able to fulfill our mission to consumers and their pets. So what I would ask of you in working with us is to make sure our BCPs get approved.
Sure.
And to maintain our staff and to help us grow, because I mean, literally the first probably 4 years I was on the board, it was a skeleton crew, and we weren't doing our job.
Sure.
And we're finally at a place now where we can be proud of what we're doing, as a board for all the staff and the productivity. So just please help us to stay where we are and to grow into the future. It's very critical. You know how many people, do you have pets?
Appreciate you asking the question as well as that follow-up. I do. My wife and I and 2 kids are proud owners of how old is he now? He's an American Bulldog, as our second American Bulldog. And so, as so many families, despite being a quote-unquote pet, a true family member, we've unfortunately, with allergy season, we have had recently take him to the vet for care, but we've always had, a great relationship with our vet as well, specific to our care.
It's an important role we play.
Absolutely.
Since so many families do count on their veterinarians just as much as their family doctor.
Completely
All
agree.
right, thank you, welcome.
Thank you so much. And let me also mention, coincidentally, I met with former Speaker Perez just this week, and I was getting his insight in terms of, the interplay of me as now director and obviously the legislature. And wasn't too familiar with the BCP process prior to me coming to DCA. And I think it's so very helpful when I do have the existing relationships with, the chairs of both budget committees and beyond. As you probably know, when you do have that existing relationship, some folks have been, in the trenches on other issues, and I think that bodes well for maybe not every BCP getting approved, but I think you understand my point.
Thank you for coming down to visit us. That was very nice of you, and thank you for owning an American Bulldog. You definitely keep us in business. Our last director of DCA would tell us all the time that we were his favorite board, and we definitely hope to be your favorite board as well too. But I would like to take this opportunity to let you know and to thank you that we have the absolute best executive officer in the entire DCA, and we also have the absolute best staff in all of DCA, and it really, really makes our job much easier. They're terrific, and I just want to make sure you know that.
Appreciate you sharing with me. Unfortunately or not, I've already publicly stated that my bias and my favorite will always be the commission, just given my history there. But I hope you
We
can.
hope to change that.
That's what I was about to say. I welcome the opportunity for you folks to change my
We'll be your
mind.
Bulldog's favorite.
There you go. Okay, that's fair enough.
So I would like to echo that too, that I consider Anne Marie and her staff to be, top notch, and so we've enjoyed working with them, and we can depend upon them to do a great job. I'd like to bring up one serious thing.
Sure.
Is that we are a member, of course, of the National Association of Veterinary State Boards, and California's always performed a very strong role there. And it just so happens that our next annual meeting meets in Texas.
Oh, goodness.
In September. And so California is being left out. There's some very important discussions going to take place on telemedicine in September, and California is going to be left out of that discussion and decisions.
Sure.
And that is not going over well with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to other people who may be not aware of this, so there's been from the state administration, there's been a travel ban on certain states, which includes Texas.
Sure.
Is there anything to be done about that?
So I do not know the powers of the director in terms of going about trying to address, obviously, a statewide travel ban for Texas. I'm happy to try to find more information, and when I do, I'll be able to reach out to you directly.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure. On the note specific to staff, appreciate you sharing your public praise for staff and the executive officer. Similarly, I'm a director who wants to ensure that in very real ways, staff is recognized as the most important asset to DCA. Maybe it's because of my labor union organizing history. I've always felt that the backbone, the true heart, and true soul of any organization is specific to its staff. And so me being here just 4 months, I've been doing my best to try to go to the different staff's meetings. They may have weekly ones or monthly ones. Coincidentally, I just was able to swing by the Board of Registered Nursing's Staff Appreciation Barbecue yesterday. And that's obviously a little example of how I'm trying to, my approach to bringing staff in terms of advancing the mission of DCA. So if there are ways in which you feel that I can assist with this board specific to staff and staff retention, staff growth, et cetera, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to partner.
So, thank you. Just one question, because it's a question that was raised and it may require a little more research. I understand I can also reach out to Ms. Lally. We have obviously governor appointees that serve on committees for the National Association, and again, as Dr. Waterhouse just informed you, it's in Texas. Do you know if the ban extends to the appointees or just the actual employees of the state?
Don't know for sure. I'm led to believe it also includes the appointees, but I'll be able
That was my
to.
understanding as well.
I'll be able to get the the direct answer to you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you. Oh, Ms. Bowler?
I was just going to say, I was
Sure.
just going to reiterate on staff and Dean, as you know, and we've worked together on a lot of things. I can't tell you what a terrific staff this is here. I've been so tremendously impressed at Anne-Marie. When I first came on board, Anne-Marie had just started, and the buildup of the staff and the quality of the professionalism on all levels, I think really, really benefits both the profession and the consumers that we're trying to protect, because they just do a terrific job and they get along very, very well, which is a big deal, obviously. So anyway, and thank you. And I also put an email into Mona on that question of the San Antonio. That conference is coming up September 14th.
Got it. Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I didn't pay them to say all.
No, she
Except
did not.
muffins in the back.
Fair enough.
Give them a little sugar and this is what happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Jennifer and I would like to know when our barbecue is.
Should we do board appreciation barbecue? Yes, okay.
Only veggie dogs.
Oh, we can make that work. Not only in addition to what everyone else eats.
Okay, moving on. Moving on to agenda item number 20, the board chair report. Got my iPad all powered up here. So I attended the CVMA Board of Governors meeting in April in Anaheim, right after our April meeting. And I gave the VMB report, and then I again gave an updated report at the PACVET conference in Long Beach, and that was at the end of June. There, the issue of blood banks and blood donors was brought up. Veterinary blood banks are licensed by the CDFA and are the suppliers of animal blood, as veterinarians know. But there was concern that private veterinary hospitals were operating outside of the law. CVMA brought this up at our meeting, but which I can then talk to Anne-Marie about. But she reports that it's been discussed with CDFA and CVMA, and current law does allow for veterinarians to use their privately owned animals and their staff animals, which is how most veterinarians get their blood. And so, anyway, this turns out not to be a problem after all, so okay, you can check that one off. I have completed the sexual harassment prevention training. So that completes all my trainings for the next 2 years. And I wish I could say that for every member here. Not according to our,
You have some
Yeah.
trainings too, because it expires after 2 years. Yeah. Yeah. Your sexual harassment prevention training that you did for the university may also qualify because it's a public entity. Yeah, you just check with Jackie. You may be able to use that.
hopefully I can. So we do need to do sexual harassment prevention training and ethics training every 2 years, every odd year. And so everybody needs to check with Anne-Marie or Jackie French, and because there is still things to be done. And so we need to hurry up and get those done because it may affect your reappointment status.
So for the record, I did do recently a state certified sexual harassment training, so I'm going to check with who again?
Jackie French. I'm fairly certain that because you're with a public entity, that your sexual harassment training qualifies for your board service.
I hope so.
So I have a list here of the report that was given to me, so if you want to check, you can check this report.
Cheryl, does that report have all of us on it and what we need to
Yes.
do? Oh, okay, I'd like to see that then.
Yes.
You can do your sexual harassment prevention while you're defensive driving. Yes, yes.
And I also participated in an AAVSB webinar on July 19th on unlicensed activity, and also touched a little on telemedicine, which is the big topic that's going to occur in September in Texas. So the webinar I listened to was presented by a Minnesota representative and an attorney that works with the AAVSB. And it really was more of a discussion of sort of current affairs on regulation. California VMB, we do have the capability that were mentioned in the webinar. We have an education letter, we have an order and hearing, there's a cite with fine or court action, and not all states have all those, but we do. And because one of the people presenting was from Minnesota, she did kind of talk about their state, and it was interesting because they do have a complaint review committee consisting of 2 people, one like us. And they also actually define certain acts that can be done by an owner on their own animal. It especially relates to large animal. So I think our regulation is that pretty much any owner can do anything pretty close to it, to their own animal. But in Minnesota, they actually state, they can dehorn, they can castrate cows or, whatever. And so they actually state the acts that can be done. That was just interesting to me. And then, as we kind of talked about, due to recent, I have legislative, but I guess it was actually from the
No, there's
state's
a bill.
attorneys. There's a
There's a
bill, but
Mhm.
the recent order came from the
Attorney General's office.
Yeah. State employees are now restricted from traveling to certain states that have been deemed to allow discrimination. This does include Texas, where the AABSB meeting is slated to occur in September. So Anne Marie for sure will not be allowed to attend at this point in time. And for the information that we have been given, that board members are also at this time not allowed to attend. And I'm really concerned because they're discussing telemedicine, which is hugely important, and that we're just being left out of these decisions.
Can you just view it? Will it be televised somehow, or no?
No, it's recorded for after the fact.
So at least it's an archive, you can watch it afterwards.
Yeah, we just can't engage.
We can't
For
vote.
instance, last year Anne Marie presented at
Yeah.
the executive officers on the
The state
subject.
of Texas discriminates against.
I think it has to do with like the bathroom bill, and
Um,
I think that's where it's
Yeah.
coming from, yeah. CDFA has proposed regulations available for public comment regarding veterinary drug retailers and the sale of medically important antibiotics by prescription for food animals. The comment period closes August 22nd, and this means that farmers need a prescription to obtain antibiotics at a feed store. And Dr. Nolan is on the SB 27 committee and may have more information to report at some other time because it's not on the agenda, so we can't talk about it now.
We
But
should
that-
probably put it on the agenda for the next meeting. We'll have a lot more to talk about
Okay,
then.
okay. And that is my board report. Any questions? Any questions from the public? Okay, Anne Marie has.
Yeah, we have a procedural issue. Yesterday, we voted on two different regulation proposals. One dealt with fee increases and the other dealt with the RBT school approvals. And we voted to accept the language. What we didn't do as a procedural matter, we need to vote to notice the fee regulations approved by the board and provide the executive officer the authority to make non-substantive changes and move forward. So if someone will entertain a motion, I can read what the motion would be, and then we need to call for it.
I'll move.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, and I'll read the motion. I'm going to document this. Okay, so this is on the fee regulations. There was a motion that was moved in second that we notice the proposed text for a 45-day public comment period and to be set for a hearing if one is requested by the public, and to delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed regulatory changes as modified if there are no adverse comments received during the public comment period. And also delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical or non-substantive changes that may be required in completing the rulemaking file. Okay?
So there's been a motion, a second. Any more comments? Any comments from the public? I'll call for the vote.
Okay.
I have a question. So if the public does come back and say this isn't a very good idea, then what?
So when the public comments on a proposed regulation, we have an obligation to respond to that comment to the Office of Administrative Law. If we change anything, that has to come back to the board. So if we decide that based on that comment, comments are adverse or in opposition, we would bring that back to the board, and the board would decide whether or not we need to modify the regulations accordingly. So the only time I'm delegated the authority to make changes is if there's no adverse comments received.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Sullivan?
So this motion that we're voting on now is strictly technical and has nothing to do with the main motion, correct?
Right. Excuse me. doesn't change the original motion adopting the language. This delegates me to move forward with the rulemaking process. Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo? Yes. Kathy Bowler?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso? Alana Yanez?
Yes.
Okay, we need to.
Motion passes.
Thank you, sorry. We need to do something similar, well, the exact same process for the RVT school motion. We did, I think that was that a unanimous? It was a unanimous vote. So we need to move forward with the same motion for RVT schools. Someone would like to make a motion?
Make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any more discussion? Any comments from the public? Call for the vote.
Okay, I should read the motion again.
Oh, that will read the
Apologize.
motion,
I move that we notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period to be set for a hearing if one is requested by the public, and to delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed regulatory changes as modified if there are no adverse comments received during the public comment period, and also delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical or non-substantive changes that may be required in completing the rulemaking file. And I don't think we did it for telemedicine either. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to remember to do this
Yeah,
every
we have to
single
remember to do
time.
this. Sorry, guys. Okay. So,
Okay, call for the vote.
motion? Oh, yeah, call for
Yeah,
the vote on
motion.
this, sorry.
Yeah.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo?
Yes.
Kathy Bowler?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso? Alana Yanez?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Last one. Okay, so,
So moved.
thank you, Mark. This is for the telemedicine language that we approved yesterday. And second, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, read the motion.
I move that we notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period and to be set for a hearing if one is requested by the public. To delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed regulatory changes as modified if there are no adverse comments received during the public comment period, and also delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical or non-substantive changes that may be required in completing the rulemaking file.
Okay, any discussion? Any comments from the public? Call for the vote.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Dr. Nunez?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo?
Yes.
Kathy
Yes.
Bowler?
Yes.
Judy Mancuso? Alana Yanez?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Motion carries. Dr. Nunez.
Just a couple of things. Because we didn't do this last time, was this the reason why we had to have that teleconference? So we don't have to have a teleconference now? Good job.
Or three.
The other thing that I just wanted to say is that although I do officially realize the importance of telemedicine and how important it is for us to be at the AAVSB meeting, I also would like to say that I do not tolerate discrimination in any form whatsoever. So I do think that I personally would like for this board to recognize the reason behind the travel ban, that it's not something that we should just easily dismiss.
Thank you. No, I don't think any of us were. I understand the reasoning and I agree with the reasoning. It just affects
I
other
know.
important decisions.
I just had to say
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
It would be nice if they had it televised, that would be the best case. And then it's easy to honor the travel ban and still be able to participate somewhat.
Since you're talking about it, I just wanted to offer an option that you might want to consider, or at least look into, which is you could call to see if they would allow a telephonic appearance. So just because they might not have that normally done, you might want to inquire since you have some time, and they could potentially set something like that up. I don't know if that would, you might want to see first if that would violate the ban in any way. I mean, it seems to me it's a travel ban, so this would not be a travel situation, but you might be able to have the opportunity to appear and present without being there. So
It could just be as simple as one Skype session, you know,
I-
big deal. People can do that on their phones.
it could even be simpler than a Skype, because Skype would indicate a visual presence, and you could possibly have that, but even at the very minimal kind of presence would be just by telephone. And we do that in legal situations. Oftentimes, we will have something called a telephonic appearance, and there's actually a company set up to facilitate that in the legal world, and there might be something like that, that at least you have the time, it sounds like at this point, to inquire into it. So that might be an option to
Okay, good
solve your
point.
issue.
Yeah, it's a good
Yes,
point.
thank you, good point.
One thing about the conference is it's, I think, a 3-day conference, and it's in a lot of different breakout sessions, so it's a little different than a single workshop, yeah.
Moving on to agenda item number 21, the RBT report by Jennifer.
So just a couple of quick updates. The VTNE job analysis by the AABSB is still ongoing. They also have addressed our concern about foreign graduate RBT pathways. So there is a subcommittee that our board will be participating in. So I will keep us updated on that. Some of the things they'll be focusing on are educational equivalence and English proficiency and several important topics. I believe we're going to be updated later today about the date of the California RBT exam audit, but I will steal that from Ethan, and that should be January 2018 that we should see those results. And it's not today, but at some point, we're going to be hearing from NAVTA regarding they are moving forward with the Veterinary Nurse Credential Change Initiative to have a universal title of Registered Veterinary Nurse, because in the country, there are several titles, RVT, CVT, LVT, LVMT. They are aware of title protection laws, but I'm sure at some point they will be coming before the board. We will be hearing from them. And I haven't brought this up yet with compounding, which we've been discussing. I think at some point when that's all said and done, that's something that should be added to CCR 2036, the Animal Healthcare Tasks for RVT, because that was restricted to DVMs and RVTs. But I will bring that up again when we are done with compounding. And the last thing on my list, at the last meeting when we were discussing animal rehabilitation, a lot of us had questions about the new specialty for RVTs. So we have a guest, Kristen Hagler, who is the president of the Animal Academy of Physical Rehabilitation Veterinary Technicians, and she's here to discuss that with us and answer any of our questions. Kristen?
Good morning, everybody. So I brought information for my reference so I can cross-reference everything that you guys have been presented, but I don't know what questions you may have other than just me sitting up here and talking to you about the pathway for the academy. It is the 15th academy recognized by NAVTA. We were recognized this year, and our first examination is going to be held next year in August 9th, I believe, in Las Vegas is where we have it planned. And we so far have 15 hopeful applicants that we will be processing their applications in January. So we had a good turnout for the first year so far. We will see how their applications look. Yes.
So at this point, no one's been issued the specialty certification because they're just in the application stages and then qualifying to take the exam, correct?
No. So the organizing committee is right now the only individuals with the veterinary technician specialty recognition. So we're the foundational board. That is included in our bylaws. So we all have, including myself, the board certification for that, or the recognition, I should say.
And how did you earn that?
So as part of NAVTA, when you're forming a specialty organization, there's a specific set of requirements for each organizing committee member. And they're all referenced on the NAVTA website as well. The minimum educational and experience requirements is 7 years. You have to be a exceptionally recognized expert in the field, and we have to produce extensive curriculum vitae, show that we're participating in the field with education, helping to promote the advancement of the specialty field that we're in and everything. We also have a board, or not a board, we have a mentor from the American College of Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation, Dr. Julia Tomlinson. So she's our liaison and our mentor for the academy to ensure that we are following what the college is recommending as well.
So how many have been grandfathered in?
9.
9, okay.
Yes, yeah, and it's a minimum of 7 for every academy. And that's how all of the academies have formed.
That's an interesting process, that you get grandfathered into the credential because you created the credential.
Yes, we are responsible for the application packet, which includes the extensive skills list. I don't know if you all have looked at it, but there are about 90 skills that you have to have, let me see if I can get the numbers. I think we set it at 80%, where we would like the applicants to have the skills signed off by their mentor, who is a veterinarian. And then there's a minimum equipment list that they have to maintain as well, so they are familiar with that. We are responsible for, as the founding committee, writing the examination as well and administration of it. So we're in the process of generating questions right now. And generally how that works is the founding board generates them, and then we submit them to a group of college diplomats to validate the examination to ensure that it is up to standard and that it's appropriate for veterinary technicians. The future, and including ourselves, the renewal process as well. Everybody has to renew every 5 years. And that can be through retaking the examination or showing that you've participated in the field through continuing education, scholarly writings, participating in veterinary conferences and stuff like that. So it's not easy.
So for RVTs who have gone through the University of Tennessee or CRI, then what do they have to do beyond that to?
That's a good question. So what we've done, we've modeled our eligibility requirements off of the Sports Medicine College. I don't know if they still have this or not, but it's based off of a point system for eligibility. So it is encouraged to go to these programs and to attain the additional training. However, for those people that don't attend those courses, they can still apply for the academy. It's heavily weighted for the additional education experience because it's all those programs are very good at helping get everything under one umbrella, but there are individuals working in like the university setting or laboratory, private practice, that kind of stuff, who maybe have been in the field for a very long time, who are recognized experts, that they can collect points essentially. There's a minimum, there's I think 425 total, and you have to have a minimum of 135, that they can still achieve that, but it's that's part of the eligibility requirements.
Yes, Dr. Nunez.
Now, you more than anyone else would know what the knowledge base and skills of a person who has gone through an RVT program and then has also gone through a credentialing program to get a specialty degree in it. How would you compare that knowledge base and skills to a person who has gone through a human PT program and then has also gotten additional accreditation in animal rehabilitation?
Right, so that's also a good question. Our academy, we decided that for the eligibility for veterinary technicians, it was very important for veterinary technicians to have a minimum of 2 years in private practice, making sure that their medicine skills are appropriate before they can apply for the academy. So our applicants have to have 5 years total of experience 2 in practice, and 3 in the specialty.
So when you say in practice,
Yes.
you mean general practice?
General practice, so nursing skills, so they can understand the foundation of anesthesia, the disease processes, to understand veterinary clinics and how they work, because those are very important things that
We had expected an RVT to know.
translate over. So that's where I think it excels at that their knowledge base is actually probably a lot higher than, say, somebody who maybe doesn't have those experiences, because it's all combined into one. And I only think one other academy may have that requirement, where they require the technician to be in the private practice first and before counting to their specialty.
But are you familiar with that extra training that a PT would go through?
Yes, that's the programs for the CCRP or the University of Tennessee
Right.
Canine Rehab Institute, or I believe a Healing Oasis. So those programs, they don't specifically go over all the nursing type skills. Like behavior, for example, is very minimally touched on. Pain management is part of it, but it's not broadly discussed, all the varying nuances and everything. It's not as involved as, say, the RVT program, where you get the same training, and everybody has the same standards, essentially.
So in all the discussions about AR, what my takeaway is that California did not have this kind of infrastructure in place for education. And so I heard of Colorado and Tennessee, maybe, is that where the schools are? And
Yeah.
are those
Yeah.
geared for PTs that want to do this as an RVT, or
No.
those are for RVTs or anybody that wants?
Okay, well, so
I'm trying to,
yeah.
here's my question, let me do my big question,
Okay.
and then you break it down for me. Is there any other program besides yours in California? That's one question. Yours is for RVTs that want the extra training to be expert with animal rehabilitation as well, right? Or
Correct.
have that specialty?
Yes.
Okay. And the only way I can come to your program is if I'm already an RVT that's been in the field, what you just described.
For the academy,
Right,
yes.
okay,
yes.
for your academy. And is that the only one in the state so far?
So the academy is nationally recognized.
Okay.
It's a national
But it's now
recognition
here in
program.
California.
It's not specific to California. So we have applicants from, Illinois, Georgia.
But your location is in California.
Our business, the nonprofit status is actually in Minnesota.
Judy, I think what you're
Yeah.
confusing is this isn't a program. This is a
Right.
certification.
Okay.
You're
I am
confusing
confused.
programs with a certification. So they're not a program that educates people. They're a certification body that if you have this much education training,
Then I can go get
Yes.
certified from them and
Yes.
take the test.
Take
And
the
take the test.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have a physical school
Oh,
location.
but I
so-
have to have this minimum amount of, requirements
Right.
before I can even sit for your certification.
Correct.
Now I get it. Okay, thank you. I was confused.
Kathy? How many do you hope to certify this year or annually?
Well, we hope everybody
I
that
know,
is
but
applied.
in terms of who's in the pipeline and things.
Well, our first year, we've had 15 people send in letter of intents. We'll receive all their applications, the deadlines at the end of the year on December 31st, no later than January 1st. So we're hoping that all of them have excellent applications, their case reports and their case logs are all perfect, and that we can have them sit for the examination. For the first year for the academy, I think we have a very high number of applicants and interest. As a comparison, the academy that was approved before us, the lab animal specialty, I believe they have 2 people that are taking their examination this year. So that may speak volumes for us, for future of how many people will continue to apply. I believe, and I'm just pulling these numbers off the top of my head, that the other academies like emergency and critical care, I think they could have upwards at 25 to 30 applicants, and then sifting through those, certain percentages for who is allowed to sit for the examination. So, for numbers, that's definitely varies by academy, but I would hope 10 a year, that would be great.
And is it widely known among RVTs, this opportunity?
Yes, we've
Since
done.
it's relatively new?
Yes, I mean, we're still, outreach is always critical, and we've been promoting, the Academy has been established since 2014 as a nonprofit, but, our recognition has been, since this year for NAVTA. So we have a huge social media outreach. I think we have over 3,000 followers on our Facebook page. So we're continually putting out educational opportunities, making sure that we're speaking with organizations like the American Association of Rehabilitation Veterinarians at various national conferences. We let people know about the academy. So all of the certifying rehabilitation schools that are open to veterinary technicians, physical therapists, and veterinary technicians, and veterinarians, that they all know of the academy as well, including our and industry leaders as well. So we're continuing the outreach as more and more sectors are recognized, but I believe that many veterinary technicians know of it.
And my last question was, and I probably know the answer, but do the RVT schools, I mean, are they involved at all in promoting this for long-term post-graduation? Or
I'd
is
say
it
not
probably not their interest?
specifically, and I think that's the case for all of the specialty academies. The RVT programs, I would assume, would let future licensed technicians know of NAVTA as the supporting organization, and that there are routes for professional development to go into the specialties. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that RVTs with this advanced credential should be allowed to practice PT under indirect supervision?
A veterinarian so according for our mentorship, the veterinary technicians are required to work with a veterinarian. In some states, if those technicians have where the veterinarian has a premise where it's separate from, say, their surgical practice, and that veterinarian asks, or, that the technician can go and work at that practice without the veterinarian there all the time, then that is, the academy would support that because the veterinary relationship, the VCPR is maintained, but.
Yeah, we agree that you
Right.
should be under supervision, but
Right.
with
Like
this
standalone.
should it be under indirect or direct, or do you have an opinion?
Preferably direct, mostly direct.
So even with the certification, you support direct supervision?
We do, in the models where there's the two practices where the veterinarian goes back and forth, those are circumstances where they retain the liability, because, veterinary technicians are not, they don't need to reiterate everything. But the direct model is the preferred model for sure, for everybody's safety.
So Kristen, just comment on
Yes.
a question. We were trying to do research on the certification without bothering you, at least to try to supply information to the board.
Right.
And perhaps it's because I'm not a member of NAVTA, but it was really difficult to find specific information without getting it through you. And I believe Stephen Sital sent me something in an email where I had links to the application and then some of the domains that you require in your skills list.
Right.
If it's not there, perhaps NAVTA could link to your organization and to those credentialing requirements.
I have not actually checked their the NAVTA website, so if they don't have the academy listed on there under the specialties, then that should be an
exist.
Right, yeah, it could be there.
Just a comment, perhaps I just don't have access to all that's on NAVTA because I'm not a member, but.
It should be all public information. All the specialties have, on the specialty
Yeah.
page, there's links to all of them. So are you saying that
We could
the
not
Rehab
find a
Academy is not?
specialty link. I mean, Nina and I both looked and there wasn't a specific link for there was an article about the new 15th
Okay.
specialty, February 17th, and then there was an update in their NAVTA news, but nothing that linked you
I see what
to-
you're saying,
yeah.
to NAVTA. Okay, so
Yeah.
unless you had the aprvt.com
Right.
website, then
Right.
you have to, I see. Okay,
Right.
well, I will let them know.
Just for students, we're talking about students being aware of access to
Right,
further
I
education.
see what you're saying.
If
Mhm.
the national organization is kind of where they go to see what they might be interested in for future growth, it would be
Understandable.
helpful to have that link.
I would agree, and we should be on there.
So I know that our board is in the process of making our website more user-friendly, so maybe we could all in the community do that, like NAVTA.
Yes, website development's very fun.
So I'd kind of like to circle back to, so
Mhm.
if you have a RVT that has already gone through the University of Tennessee or has the CRI,
Mhm.
what do they need, are they automatically, do they need, you mentioned case logs, what do they need
Correct.
to do to become, to have a specialty?
Right, so they have to fulfill the point system, which, I believe is 135 points. I'm gonna try and get to in our bylaws where we can find this, so I can read them off to you guys. Okay, so if you don't mind, this might take a minute because there's a lot of things. So first, they need to submit their letter of intent that they intend to apply, and they have to submit at the same time 2 letters of recommendation. Those can be from the applicant's mentor who's certified in veterinary physical rehabilitation or a diplomat of the college. And until a sufficient number of the diplomats exist, the academy will, for the first 3 years, accept letters of recommendation from other diplomats, so from the surgical college, for example. In addition, until a sufficient number of the academy members exist, we will, for the first 3 years, accept any credentialed veterinary technician with the specialty in, say, surgical or anesthesia and analgesia as well as a recommendation letter. And what we're trying to do for that is to build enough of a base so people can apply, but then the preference would be to have other VTS rehabilitation be writing recommendation letters and the diplomats. The minimum points credentialing criteria, which they have to provide documentary evidence in the application packet that they did fulfill these things. The mentor agreement request form, mentorship. Each candidate shall be supervised by a veterinarian who is certified or is a diplomat of the college. And the mentor needs to be in the same locality as the candidate and should be able to communicate at a minimum by video conferencing. And one of the reasons that we put that in there was because we recognize that there may be a veterinary technician who's working at a private practice who is an exceptionally qualified expert, but may not work with a rehabilitation or a veterinarian who's a diplomat or certified. So what that it does, 2 things, it encourages them to network with the community and speak with somebody who is. And that person will be the one to sign off on all their skills. So they can do that, and this is similar for other academies, they can do that by video conferencing to ensure competency. They have to show proof of graduation from a AVMA veterinary technician program or credentially for the license to practice as a veterinary technician. And we do include other countries as well. We do have an applicant that's interested from the United Kingdom, so hopefully they will apply next cycle. And meet the experience requirements after graduation from a recognized school of veterinary technology. They have to have, as I said before, the minimum of 5 years as a veterinary technician, with those years split up, 2 in practice, 3 in the specialty. The education requirements, I'm just going to summarize all of these things. They have to have a minimum of 40 qualifying hours of advanced continuing education. And with that, they have to show who is giving the lectures. And it's something where it needs to be a diplomat in some specialty or another technician specialty. So we show that those are high standard education levels. They have to have 4 detailed case reports, which we're limiting them to a certain number of pages. And the case logs, they have those, the minimum number of 40 cases, but no more than 60 cases for the case logs. So those are little summaries that are correlated to the skills list. And they have to be a current member of NAVTA. And membership of the AARV is strongly encouraged. That's not something we can require, but we look favorably upon that so we can see.
What's the AARV?
The American Association of Rehabilitation Veterinarians. There's a technician associate membership that we can be. And then they must need to pass the examination. And then they will get their award recognition. So it's a quite extensive process. Most take about, they have a while to go through it, yes.
What's the cost for an RVT to achieve that?
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers in front of me. Yeah, generally, so they have an application fee, and it's, I think, around $45. And then the examination fee, I think we have that at $75. They're listed on our website. And so those are the costs involved on, for the applicant, for us. Now, that doesn't include the costs for the veterinary technician to attain the CE, which I think would be the highest cost for them. So it could cost several thousand, depending on where they go for travel and stuff like that, and how long it takes them to acquire it.
I have one more question. Who runs your testing?
So the board of directors, the executive board, we will be proctoring the examination. And the examination is, validated by the diplomats from the college. So we will be picking locations based on, where we think that would be most accessible for candidates to have the examination. This next year, we have it at the Equendo Center in Las Vegas.
And is it purely written?
We're not there yet. We would like it, so right now it's going to be a multiple choice examination. In the future, we would like to have some sort of a hands-on laboratory, practicum. But that's very complicated and extensive. So that's something that we hope to do, because much of what we do in rehabilitation is hands-on. So they need to physically demonstrate their skills. Some academies do videos where the applicant has to answer certain questions, but I believe most of the academies are multiple choice for their examinations run by the board of directors at conferences.
I have a question.
Yes.
The RVTs that successfully complete your program, I know it's very new, so is the idea that they will be paid more with this certification?
We would love that. This
Have
is
you
a
seen
constant
evidence?
discussion
Yeah.
for all of the specialties. That is something that we encourage dialogue with the employer with the veterinary technician.
What is the hope? How much more in pay are you hoping they'll be able to receive?
$100 now. That's a very difficult question to answer since it's so unique.
You have to remember, this is a national program.
Right.
So
Right.
Arkansas is going to be different than California.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I've seen range, people say they get no raise, and this is across the board for all specialties.
Okay.
There's several questions where people say, why are you pursuing a specialty? Many technicians say for their advancement of their own knowledge. They all, most hope that they're going to be getting a raise from it. It could range between $1 and $4. That's like high end, depending on where your location. But really, it's a standard of care, for the patients and everything. You have to look at it on the other end. They may not get a monetary per hour raise, but the employer maybe would give them an additional continuing education budget, since they have to maintain their award recognition through that, so they can ensure that they are working towards that or supporting them by going and speaking at a conference, giving them time to work on the clock, essentially, to generate a presentation for the public and everything. So the hope is more money. That would be great, but it's not, we can't guarantee that.
Jennifer.
I wanted to add to that. Many moons ago, when I was working in specialty medicine, the internal medicine specialty for RVTs was created, and my employer offered stipends. It was $1 or $2 an hour to have that specialty. It was an extra $1 an hour for a graveyard shift. If someone had been accepted to vet school, that was an extra $1. So it was dollars, but they added up. And
Yeah.
then you would be more qualified to apply maybe at a specialty practice or a different type of practice.
Right.
I think you'll have to recruit some very compliant golden retrievers to help you out with your practical.
No problem. Well, that actually may be something that we do. We'll have to start flying with dogs. Yes.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Nancy?
I don't have a question, I just have two comments. One, Dr. Nunez seemed to be surprised about the qualifications of the organizing committee. This is standard for every specialty, including veterinary colleges. The organizing committee considered the experts in the field, and they get together and start the college. You need to start with somebody, and you can't test yourself, so you always have an organizing committee of recognized experts. And the other was just to let you know about the veterinary nurse. We were told at our annual conference that NAVTA is planning to start campaigning in California in 2019. That California is in the second phase. They decided to start with the easier states first. And I'm not sure why they put California in the second phase, because I think California is probably going to be the hardest state. But anyway, they've chosen 2019 to start campaigning in California.
Well, thank you very much. That's very
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much for being interested.
Thanks for being here.
My goal is to convert everybody to a rehabilitation veterinarian or veterinary technician, so I can convince you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Kristen.
Yes, you're welcome.
Anything more from?
And that was all I have. Thank you for doing my work, Kristen.
You're welcome. So moving on to agenda item number 22, report on the International Council for Veterinary Assessment Survey by Kathy.
And I will say that I'm going to defer this report till our next meeting, unfortunately, because our survey is complete, and it's really a robust survey on veterinarians, on their practice, and all elements of their practice, both in U.S. and Canada. And but the presentation is due to be presented at the AABSB meeting in September,
In Texas.
which I was going to be part of, but not. But anyway, I will. But in the October meeting, I hope to have a nice PowerPoint with some really great statistics to share. It's really a fascinating survey.
I look forward to that.
We had a 35% return rate, which is huge.
Whoa, that is huge.
Huge, yeah.
Wow. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 23, the executive officer and staff reports.
Hello again, everyone. So you see before you the report on the budget. Attached to that is the FM11, the May expenditure report. I was not able to get the final FM12 expenditure report, which would mean the end of our fiscal year. However, I can say with certainty that we have spent every penny that was appropriated to us. And to Mr. Ed's point yesterday, some boards don't do that. They have reserve built in. We don't currently, hence the fee increase. One other thing I wanted to mention in my report is the budget change proposals. We did have one that was a budget change via the budget vehicle where we were able to increase our AG and OAH appropriation one time. In the meantime, we did have a BCP that was looking to ongoing fund the AG, OAH increased expenditures. That has moved positively through, and we are approved for that BCP. However, at the time at which we requested the BCP, we had not actualized the true amount of AG and OH expenditures that were ongoing, and that is to say they were higher than we had planned. So we plan on moving forward with additional BCPs or budget requests to continue to increase those AG, OH appropriations, as the ongoing appropriation will not match what we're likely to spend this fiscal year. Additionally, the other BCP that's out there is our veterinary assistant BCP. It was to permanently fund the 4 positions that were given to us back in 14-15. We've had some positive response from the department, so hopefully that will be a successful BCP, and I can report that in the future. If you have any questions.
So how many people do you have working on the permits now? the VACSB?
We have 4 positions allocated. One is
Currently.
allocated to enforcement, to handle enforcement issues, because we are seeing a higher proportion of those folks coming in with fingerprint issues that naturally get enforcement involved in the application process.
Anybody else have any questions? Kathy?
I did. Was the OPES survey for RVTs, is that the $72,000 on the May 2017 grid?
The interagency with OPES?
Yeah, is the 72,000 that we assume that.
Yeah, so our charges for OPES are typically a contract charge for whatever activities we do. That's to say the ongoing exam development costs. And yes, we did have this fiscal year, or rather last fiscal year, we did have an occupational analysis that is part of that encumbrance.
Okay, which is why we didn't have, okay. And then I have another question on the expenditures, the fee audit, where is that cost in?
That cost is folded into, if you look at the bold heading departmental services, the line above that, C&P Services External, that was a
Okay.
$21,000 contract with CAP,
Okay,
and it's wrapped up in those costs right there.
great, okay, thank you.
Got it.
Just want to point out that Dr. Nolan brought up a very good point at our last meeting. There looked like there was some random figures under exam expenses that weren't carried over, and they actually may have been up under departmental services as well. And so we clarified what was wrong with our spreadsheet. So wanted to make sure that, and I believe you connected with Ethan and he was able to
Yeah.
give you
Yeah, we
information
did.
about that. Oh, that's right, yeah.
Great.
In public.
Yeah.
What are exam expenses?
Typically, what you'll see under those is the SME costs to
Subject
staff
matter
the work,
experts.
sorry,
Okay.
subject
She
matter,
doesn't
sorry,
know all the acronyms
acronyms,
yet.
I'm sorry. Staffing workshops to develop the exams and/or the occupational analysis work.
Oh. And she been given the list of acronyms?
Oh, it's in the board member.
Right.
A lot of times it is spelled
Yeah.
out, so you just
Yeah.
have to, but if you don't catch it in the
Yeah.
first time it's listed out, they don't always realize, I gotta flip back and.
You'll see, also see there's a $27,000
Yeah.
$27,000 projection. That also includes cost for PSI, that's our administrator of our exam.
Okay.
Those contract costs are built into that too.
The 27,000?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Ethan's acronym is DUDE.
We're gonna put you, okay, so, any other questions?
Yeah, I mean,
Any questions from the public? Nancy?
Ethan, do you have a handle on what percentage of VACSP applications are rejected because of fingerprint issues?
not rejected. We've seen, it's been at least 3,000, I don't recall exactly the number of applications received. Of those, we have upwards of 250 with fingerprint issues, and we have rejected a few of those, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They just need more research when you say fingerprint?
Yeah, so typically, there's a hit on their fingerprints. It could be anything. If there's a controlled substances felony, by law, we have to make them ineligible. Otherwise, that application gets elevated through the process and ultimately goes to Anne-Marie to determine whether they can get licensed or denied licensure based on whatever conviction it was that showed up.
So if it was a misdemeanor 10 years ago, then
I see.
you're more likely to.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's-
who
it
makes
really,
the
really
decision
depends.
and how
It's
do you
hard to
make
say
it?
what,
How do you-
yeah.
what's the
Okay, so there is no, if there was a standard rule, one hit denial, then that would be in regulation. It's not how it works. So I see every file that has a misdemeanor or felony conviction. I look at a few things. I look at length of time since the conviction occurred. Rehabilitation, did they complete all their probation requirements, their criminal probation requirements? I look at whether or not there's been any other infractions between that time. And probably the most revealing factor to me is, did they disclose it? So a trigger for a denial is failure to disclose. And that is clear in our regulations, that if they check that they don't have any criminal history and something shows up on their fingerprints, typically it's a denial for fraudulent application before the board.
Does that then affect their other license? Well, if they're applying for this, then they're an RVT.
No,
They're
the-
looked at independently.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Judy.
So people that apply for the VACSP permit are usually just maybe front desk people, they're employees, but they're not RVTs, correct? But I've had access, if I'm one of these people, I've had access to the medicine box. Now all of a sudden I have to be fingerprinted to have access to the medicine box. So I say, no, I haven't had any convictions, you find out I've had a conviction, boom, I'm out, which is
Not necessarily.
not necessarily, but that would be good grounds for not being eligible. And I'm sure the employer would probably be surprised to find that out and would want to know. And then if you said, yes, I had a conviction, and then based on what that conviction is and the time, you determine that. We never see these, they never escalate up to us.
Yes, they can. So I make the initial decision, it's in regulation, the executive officer decides whether or not there is reason for a denial, sufficient evidence for a denial. They have a right of appeal. So if they appeal that denial, then it goes to a statement of issues and may come to a board either via settlement or probation license or because there's a hearing. So
But we've
you-
never seen that yet.
Oh, you will. On a
Yeah,
VACSP.
you will. Yeah, you will.
Okay, so that's to come, and that was where I was going with this actually, was, are these gonna be coming before us with our other cases? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, we've been doing licensure for about 9 months, so it'll happen.
And I think we
no
already
doubt.
had a couple of appeals on VACSP, so
Yeah.
you'll be seeing those
Yeah.
in your cases.
Okay, so that's a new type of case for us to get used to and see, and so, but right now, you're weeding them out based on the typical stuff we look at, the date of conviction, rehabilitation, and so a lot of them are not gonna bubble up to us because you're taking care of them. It's when they want an appeal, actually, is when, okay, very good, thank you.
And that's true for all license types, not just VACSP.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I was under the impression that if there was any conviction, then it would have to either go to a hearing or to a settlement.
No.
But you said that you have the ability to say that there's not reason for denial of the application?
Correct.
So could you just give me like an example of a conviction pops up, but then you say it's not a reason for denial?
We're treading on not having this on the agenda. I'm getting
Yes.
uncomfortable
Okay.
because we're
Yes.
getting really far into this. If we want to agendize this and we can talk about how the executive officer reviews this, and we also need to be careful because it's not cookie cutter. It's not what you consider a standard application of rule where every time there's one conviction, I'm making a certain decision. I have to look at the entirety of the file.
You said you take like the length of conviction,
Right,
rehabilitation,
right.
all those things. you take
Right,
into
there's
consideration.
several standards that we look at, and we can talk about that at
Can
some
we
point.
agendize
Sure.
it, please? Because I think that we should understand all that before we get hit with these cases to look at.
Okay, but I just want to reiterate, this isn't any different than what we do with
No,
veterinarians,
I understand,
RVTs, so
but I'd like to know,
It's
right.
not a new process.
No, it's not a new process, but it's a new licensee.
Okay,
And so just to get used to what it is that you're doing before we see it. Thank you.
okay.
Is anything else on the?
Unless you have further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No, I'm
Dr. Rowland.
I'm getting a reputation, I can tell. I just wanted to thank Ethan.
Budget queen.
You've been very proactive and helpful and easy to work with, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're
And
welcome.
I really appreciated the page that gave a summary of the budget, and, you know, I don't remember that before, but maybe it was there, but it's very helpful,
Okay.
honestly.
Yeah.
I would just like your opinion on the, I guess I'm on the CNP, the external CNP. Ethan, what's your opinion on how to mitigate that sort of effect in the future? You know, it looks like the Maximus credit card, it's hard, can we control that? Can we actually pick a budget number that we can get close to in the future, or is that something that's hard to do?
It's hard to do, yeah. And one of the artifacts of Breeze is there is a credit card charge we do encumber now.
Yeah.
So that is definitely something that's on there that we're paying for.
And can you shop that credit card fee? Do you, or is that set by the state?
It's negotiated by the department.
Oh, so the department as a whole? Okay.
Right. It's almost
So
like the
not
pro
just-
rata situation we get into with some of our things, yeah.
How much of that deficit is credit card expense, though? I mean, do you know?
Well, so I believe the encumbrance is somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000. We did liquidate about half of that this year because we didn't use it all, but you definitely encumber that much in anticipation, depending on how many transactions you get through Breeze. We're seeing some good compliance with
And who
online.
uses American Express versus?
There is an American Express one, yes.
Okay. My next question, which may be also for Anne Marie, is it seems like in the expert witness category, we tend to overspend. Do you foresee that as being, what can I say, what's the return on that investment, I guess? Is it helping?
So there's two things with expert witnesses that we look at. So our in-house consultants are considered expert witnesses, as are the individuals that are external consultants that weigh in on our enforcement cases. We have seen a higher expense in expert witnesses, and I think I quoted yesterday, it's costing us almost $10,000 a month just for our internal consultants.
Yes, yeah, that's about right.
But we're also vetting more cases. So when Candace goes through her enforcement statistics, when you compare 600 cases a few years ago to 1,000 cases, that's going to increase. They look at every single standard of care case. So I don't see that going down. When you talk about return on investment, we look at the quality of the reports that we get from our experts. It's really right now quality assurance, especially with our external experts, has been an ongoing discussion at our expert witness training. And I'm going to try to be as politically correct as possible as I say this. We discontinue using experts that do not provide quality reports because they need to be able to at least look at the facts and either substantiate that there's evidence or not. And our staff is keen on gathering those reports, reviewing those reports, and then making a decision about whether that was a good time investment with that expert. So we do quite a bit of quality control with our external experts. Our consultants, we don't have it. We don't really have issues with our consultants doing the in-house work. I don't know that they have ever undergone a specific desk audit for how long it should take to review a case because the cases are all so unique and the complexity of each case is so different. But I can tell you that the 3 in-house consultants we have now are very seasoned doing this work. So
I guess my point was, is it at some point better to increase your in-house expertise? Because when you talk about training the outside expert witnesses and then replacing them and then training and replacing, you know, is there I'm just I'm devil's advocate, I don't know if it's true or not, but I just wonder if it's at some point you can pull in, I know there's a breadth, obviously you have to deal with, but I just wondered if there's a way to kind of mitigate some of that.
Well, because we have a 2-level review where we have an in-house consultant review the case before it goes to an external, it really is, there's some duplication there. But that's something that this board requested as an important piece to our enforcement continuum. So our in-house consultants are really looking at, they're really doing kind of like a desk investigation. They're part of the complaint process. Our external experts are really part of the discipline process. They're part of the case that's moving forward to the AG's office typically. And they would be the individuals that testify on behalf of their expertise. So we really can't do away with that external expert because they're that second level review on those cases. We also use external experts that are specialists, that we don't have that specialty in the office. So if we need a cardiologist or a dermatologist or some other veterinary specialist, because the case deals with a specialty practice, that we have to farm out.
So do we recoup any cost for those expert witnesses when we then put the amount of money in the case for them to pay? Is that a part of?
So through cost recovery, we
Yeah.
have an opportunity to. I think
Opportunity?
Because what we heard yesterday is, well, Judy, you've been around long enough to know that the judge may cut our cost recovery in half.
Yeah.
As part of the
Right.
settlement agreement or the decision, you know. So we do put in our costs, AG costs, expert witness costs, as an itemized total of what it cost us to investigate the case.
Right.
Whether or not we get that back.
Okay, I understand that, yes.
So one thing that I would suggest that we do is, as we're raising fees here, in the future quickly, it would be very helpful. We talk a lot about how we had X number of cases a few years ago and then X number, we should have a chart that says, here's what we did 6 or 8 years ago when your fee was $290 or $200 or whatever, and here's why we've had to raise fees. And maybe you have that already.
We do, because it's part of our budget change proposals, and Candace is going to talk to you about that in our enforcement report.
Okay.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Should we move on to enforcement? Or just do, okay, so do
Gotcha.
licensing and examination?
Yeah.
See,
Just
that
reorder.
sounds good.
Okay, my report's before you. Not a lot different. We've talked about here and there some of the things like the OA that is in my report. The stats are in there, of course, for you. Continue to get VSDS applications at a pretty high rate. Staff is doing a good job of keeping up with those. I think the one thing I did want to mention on my report is we unfortunately lost our long-tenured lead analyst in licensing, Michelle Rose. She started with us as a cashier and rose to the level of our lead analyst. She's a very valuable employee. So I am currently recruiting. The recruitment period just closed. I got about 140 applications to choose from. Other than that, my staff has done a really good job of picking up where she left off, but it's definitely a huge effect on us, as she was very much a great employee to have around. But other than that, any questions that you have?
Even just one note on California board examination. I think it's just a correction. It should be May 2017 to October 2017.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably. And I was not able to get the pass rates by school. We normally provide them from January to June, July through December. Due to the staff changes and trying to train the new staff, I was unable to pull that report in time, but you will see it in October.
So I have a question. On the VT&E, March, April 2017, I've never seen it as low as 52%.
Yeah.
I mean, could it be just because it's not that many and the rates were low, or?
I guess it's possible.
Is this just a trend that it's gone down now to that low of a place?
You know, you do see occasionally there is a blip, either high or low. However, I will be able to provide this score, or pass rates rather, by school, so maybe that might be indicative of something.
Something has to tell us why
Yeah.
these numbers are getting so low. I don't remember anything ever falling below in the 50s, let alone 52.
It is low.
And the number of candidates is similar to
Mhm.
16 too.
Right.
It's not that far off.
At the last meeting, you asked Ethan to provide you with a chart of population growth. I think this kind of speaks to Dr. Nolan's question about we're doing more work, we have more
Absolutely.
licensees, more applicants. So this is on the admin side, but this is really helpful because what you see before you is a graph showing growth from
Yeah.
2008,
Got it.
2009.
Wow, that was set up, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. 2008, 2009, through 16, 17. And again, this is the admin side of things, and we'll talk about the enforcement side as well, but clearly, we have seen a growth in overall population, and all of this costs money to do business. So, Ethan, thank you for pulling all this together.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ethan did a lot of work to prep for this meeting in terms of graphs and charts and memos and
Easy to
what
read.
have you.
Did Breeze do this?
No, Ethan did not.
No. Me and Excel work
Breeze
together
thing?
on
Yeah,
that.
so,
You'll see it, you may see it on the second and third pages, there's a spike in vet tech
yeah,
apps.
What's up with that?
We had the limited term eligibility window at that time. It was a 1-year period where folks that are otherwise qualified for licensure had a very specific window to qualify for the exam.
Thank you, Ethan, this is great.
You're welcome.
I had one quick question, and it's not really huge in terms of the differential, but the veterinary premises licenses are slightly down this half of the year than would have been compared to last year. Was there a reason for that?
That's,
Just
well, I honestly, I think
opening?
it's a factor of when I pulled the data, because so.
Oh, it might not be.
We've had this thing where all premises expire in May. We've adjusted that with Breeze. So
Okay.
we're kind of in that period where there is always people that are delinquent with their applications.
Okay.
So
Got it.
it's a little bit of a misleading number, but we've seen a steady increase over time, absolutely.
Thank you.
Through Breeze now, were you gonna ask for retroactive fingerprints on any veterinarians or RVPs?
Correct.
All veterinarians should be fingerprinted?
There's a group where they may not be, yeah. I've researched past, well, when the actual regs were implemented to do retroactive fingerprinting, the data indicated at that time there are 4,500 RVTs and veterinarians that may not have fingerprints on file. And we're actively working on making sure we can get that done.
Okay, and how is that going to affect budget? Will it affect much?
I don't think so. What's going to happen is when we send the renewal, we're going to flag those folks that are not fingerprinted, and the renewal will go out with a reminder, hey, we need your fingerprints. My hope is to have that data before the renewals hit so I can send them some kind of correspondence and let them know they're required to have fingerprints upon renewal, which may be several months in advance. So
Yes. Okay.
it'll just be a little extra step for those affected people when they do renew, because they won't be able to renew unless they have fingerprints on file. And if there's hits, then that might further slow a few of them down.
So
And that
question.
could affect budget, yeah.
So if I renew, or my renewal is up, I'm a veterinarian, and I have to I have to do my fingerprints.
Right.
I don't do it. 6 months later, 3 months later, when do we take action, and what is that action?
Well, I'm sure we will take action, but they will not be able to renew. They'll be unlicensed.
Expired.
So at what point then do they get something in the mail that says, hey, you are now, this is unlicensed activity and you have to cease and desist, or
Yeah.
where does it go from there?
They're notified that they're unlicensed.
Within like 15 days of it, or immediately the letters go out?
As soon as their license expires, they're not licensed to practice,
Okay,
and they have to complete the fingerprints.
right.
We wouldn't otherwise know if they continue to practice unless we receive a complaint, but they know at the time that their license expires, and the notice says, you're not licensed to practice unless you have a valid license.
And the
So-
assumption is they're still practicing, because, I mean, they'd have to like stop and just go home, so they're still practicing, right?
But that's true with anyone.
That's normal.
That's true
Right,
with anyone.
right,
who
right, right,
renews
right,
their
right. But now,
Embrace.
yeah, this is the first time, though, there's been a trigger like this with the requesting the fingerprint.
No, because there's a trigger right now for people who fail to check the
Mhm.
box about criminal convictions or whether or not they completed CE or, you know, so
Right,
there's
the criminal
several.
conviction box,
Right, so
yeah.
when
and
they
see.
receive a renewal notice.
So it's an additional.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that explains it, thank you.
I have one more question. Are you done with your reports? Maybe? How do you feel Breeze is going? I know it was kind of a big hoopla and it took a lot of energy and time and it had a lot of problems, but do you feel like your staff has kind of settled into it and it's?
I think it's going well. I mean, you know, with any major system update, there's going to be issues that we're working through. I mean, the first 6 months were rough. I'm not going to lie. We're gradually improving the program. We just recently implemented a no longer interested interface where if somebody goes canceled on their license, it automatically deletes their fingerprints from the system after a prescribed amount of time. So there's some system improvements ongoing. That was a manual process in the past, and there were times where we had hundreds of NLIs that we had to catch up on, you know, at the end of the year. So stuff like that happens, I'm thankful that we have Breeze because it really saves us time.
Good, finally.
So do you think the Breeze costs now are stable and it will be, you know, year to year will be about the same, or they're still gonna be?
Well, we're still being charged for some of the Breeze costs, and also IT staff has increased to help us with some of these work offs like the university license. So we're still paying for Breeze. Yeah.
Dr. Sullivan?
Well, just an anecdotal story on where it is working. I got a panic call last week from my tech, our only tech, who said, "I forgot to renew. What do I do?"
Mm-hmm.
And I told her to get on Breeze and what to do, and she called me back in a few minutes. She says, "I got my license. Do I have to wait for the printout of it?" And I said, "No, you can work today." So
That's awesome. Yeah, we really try to sell that. Yeah.
she was back working, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still, what's the turnaround time on fixes and things like that I mean, before it was kind of slow because everybody was throwing things in. Are you pretty caught up on what you guys
It
wanna-
depends, you know, because if there's like a system fix or enhancement we're doing, you know, you have to plan pretty far in advance. It's about 3 months plan in advance, and then you have to prioritize which enhancements or fixes you want to do. So you try to get out in front of it as much as possible and prioritize the most urgent ones. There's always emergency releases of something like goes crazy wild sideways. There's options to get those things fixed right away.
Immediately.
Yeah. But you try to go on these prescribed release schedules are about 8 weeks every release where you have enhancements going in that we request.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell me, just really quickly, just so I could get it,
Mhm.
what was Breeze and when was it implemented and how much did it cost?
I don't know if I want to touch the cost component, but I'll tell you, we implemented it, we're in release 2, so there was several boards that went with release 1. They were the early adopters. We are one of, I think it was 7 to 9 boards that went with release 2 January 2016. So what it did for us was primarily allow for the online interaction of our applicants and our licensees. That was the biggest benefit that I saw to the Breeze system. But in the back office type functionality, we had 2 systems that we were using for applicants and licensees that combined those 2 systems into one system. And beyond that, it allowed us to collect a lot of data, so we can leverage all that data to whatever needs we want. And the NLI thing I just mentioned, that's a huge win for us, I think. We have been asked to have performance measures. This allows us to monitor time for applications to be processed where we couldn't have done that before, or we were doing it on paper. So it was a huge change for us. There was a lot of hiccups. Admittedly, we were better than release 1. We planned a lot better, but it's definitely been a challenge, but it's starting to smooth out now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, how much did it cost?
A lot. I don't know our exact figure for our board. I mean, yeah,
Millions,
several million. Yeah, over time. There wasn't like a bills due today. We're paying for it.
Okay, I was just gonna say.
We're paying for it yearly. Yeah.
Way too much, way too much, more than it should have.
It's been a couple $100,000 for the last couple of years, and probably will be. That's direct Breeze costs. I mentioned before, there's a component at department pro rata level that we pay for OAS services on a pro rata basis. So that has also increased. because of the IT staff that has had to be hired.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions from the public? Let's take a bio break and come back in 10 minutes. Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. So we're moving on to agenda item number 23B, enforcement with Candace.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to begin my comments by providing a bit of background and history with respect to the enforcement unit, what we do and how we do it. And I know that this is probably, you've heard it all before, but if you'll indulge me for just a moment. As you know, in July of 14, we were granted the authority for additional positions. Some of those were in enforcement. And we spent the last half of 2014 recruiting and filling positions, training staff, in addition to our regular workload. And anybody who's been through the hiring process or the recruiting process here knows that it's dreadful at best. But anyway, we, when I came on here and became the enforcement program manager, obviously, my first goal is to identify what do we have and where is it and how are we going to address it. So identifying the backlog and a plan for moving forward was first and foremost. And I tend to have, in my professional life, I tend to be very linear and logical. My husband will tell you I am not that way in my personal life. But anyway, so in looking at that, we made a decision to initially focus on AG cases. And that goes against the whole linear logical thing because I would typically want to start at the beginning of the process. But the reason that we did that is because these were cases that were aging. We had already identified that there were egregious violations of law and that formal discipline was warranted on those cases. So that's where we started. And I know the first few times that we met, you were provided with statistical reports that showed progress with regard to resolution of some of the older cases. And we've really done a great job about, if I can toot our horn, about resolving those older AG cases. But now, well, a while back, what we did was turn our focus to the complaint investigations, and now going through that same process with respect to those. So I want to kind of give you an idea of, my goal in all of this is to provide you with not only the numbers, but kind of the total of everything that entails, the age of the cases and so on and so forth. So with that being said,
What are we looking at first?
you have my enforcement report in front of you.
Okay.
As you can see, the board received over 1,000 complaints this year. And Dr. Nolan, you asked how does that compare to prior years? In 12-13, we received 592 complaints. In 13-14, we received 648 complaints. 14-15, we received 697. In 15-16, we received 820. So you can see.
This is about outreach.
What's that?
I think this is about outreach as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
last year when we were at ASBSP, Hawaii had received, 5 complaints? 8 complaints in a year.
So of our current total pending caseload with respect to complaint investigations, we still have a number of older cases that we're working through. And of course, the result of that, if those cases are determined to be egregious violations, then those will go to AG, or they may go to citation and fine. So some of these cases we may still see matriculating through that process. But I can tell you that at this point in time, the oldest cases we have were received in the 12-13 fiscal year. However, 87% of the roughly 750 cases that we have pending right now were received on or after June 1st of 2016.
That's
So-
great. Wow, that's crazy good
So-
compared to where we've been.
So, I'm going to move on through my report, but I'll ask you to hold on to that information for just a moment. In our complaint investigations, we've really been striving to increase not only, the efficiency of what we're doing, but also increase the quality of what we're doing. And part of that is ongoing efforts with the Division of Investigation to look at unlicensed activity. And we've had a number, and Anne Marie reported yesterday, we've recently had a number of cases where with the Division of Investigation, we've identified unlicensed activity that's occurring. And as a result of that, those cases are being forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for filing of criminal charges. So that is something that we're continuing to do, and we're making those connections on an ongoing basis. So we're getting more well-known with various district attorneys. That's a good thing. We are going to add the unlicensed activity complaint form to our website. The extent of the board's authority when it comes to citation or unlicensed activity is the issuance of citation and fine. So you can see that in those cases where it's really egregious, the value of being able to refer a case to the DA is paramount. In addition, we've participated in several joint investigations with other government agencies, Board of Pharmacy, Drug Enforcement Administration, the SPCA, and local animal control agencies. And ultimately, the details of those efforts are going to be, you're likely to see those included in enforcement cases that come before you. As I pointed out earlier, we're still working on the backlog for complaint investigations. So with respect to citation and fine, the progress that we're making in complaint investigations is trickling over to, I shouldn't say trickling, it's flooding over to citation and fine. And this is, the issuance of citation and fine is a very labor and time-intensive process, and it requires a certain level of expertise. And we are fortunate right now to have Nikki Bach working for us. She's a retired annuitant and has that relative expertise. So we are fortunate, and she's making tremendous progress in that area. And that's reflected in our statistics too, where you can see that there were 16 citations issued in Q4.
So Candace, how far back then are the complaints, the oldest complaints that you're just getting to?
The oldest was received in the 12-13 fiscal year.
Oh, I had cases back in 12-13, so complaints would be the same? I'm thinking of a case as something that it's at some place in the process versus a complaint that just came in and hasn't been sorted through. Is there?
No. When the board receives a complaint,
Yeah.
Where we have been measuring for intake is 2 days. So within 2 days, that complaint is opened
So we're
and
current
assigned.
on any complaints that come in, we're totally current. It's once they're in the process.
Absolutely.
And then we call them a case.
Yes.
So complaint or case is 12-13, and that's synonymous.
Yeah.
Okay, I
A
was
case is
thinking of-
initiated by a
Okay,
complaint.
thank you,
Mhm.
yeah. I was thinking.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can complaints only come from consumers, or do they ever come from cities or counties based on vets that they've either received multiple complaints from their citizens from, or that they actually contract with?
Absolutely. They can
Okay.
come from anywhere.
And is it publicly put on a website if a veterinary office has been disciplined by this board and has gotten citations?
If they have been formally disciplined, yes, the accusation and the decision are posted on the board's website.
And so a consumer can just go on the website and type in a vet they're
Exactly.
researching just to see if there is a history?
Exactly.
Okay.
Citation and fine, those documents are not posted on the website, but the information that there's been a citation issued is posted on the website. And if they'd like a copy of that, they just request it through a public records request, and we provide those.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Last year, the board began participating in the Franchise Tax Board's Intercept program. So citations that have been closed because they were uncollectible. Obviously, if those individuals are not licensed with the board, we have no further recourse. You can't hold up a license because they're not licensed. So we've been referring those over to the Intercept program, and to date, we've received $1,700, over $1,700 in payments for that. Not a drop in the bucket compared to what it cost us, but still. Our expert witness training has been, typically we do 2 a year. We've conducted one earlier this year, and the second has been put on hold for right now pending hiring and training of new enforcement staff. Formal discipline. The board referred a total of 71 cases to the AG's office this past fiscal year and resolved a total of 47. So I'd like to provide you kind of with the same information with regard to formal discipline cases as we did with the complaint investigation cases. The numbers with respect to what's referred to the AG's office has consistently been going up. The numbers with regard to what has been pending at the AG's office at the end of the fiscal year has been consistently decreasing. So that kind of tells you we're doing a lot more work in the middle of that. In Q4 of this past fiscal year, we closed 10 AG cases. And one of the concerns is always our performance measure and our time to complete those cases. It's been high. The performance measure, the goal is 540 days. And as you can see, we're consistently running well above that. And I've explained in the past that this is an average, so when you consider that there are a couple of those older cases factored in, it can really throw off the numbers. So to kind of give you an idea of this past quarter, there were 10 cases that were closed. Our average days for those cases to close was 974 days. But one case was one of our oldest. It was 2,327 days. And if you take that case alone out and average the time that it took us to resolve the other 9 cases, it's at 534 days. So it's significant. Cases pending at the AG's office right now, we have one that the complaint was filed in 2011. It is in the process of being finalized, and when I say in the process of being finalized, it is we at least have a signed stipulation, and it's moving through the process. We have 4 cases that were initiated in 2012. 2 of those are in the process of being finalized. We have 6 cases that were received in 2013. 4 of those are being finalized. 2014, we have 7 cases. 4 are being finalized. And 2015, we have 10 cases. So of the 81 cases that we have pending at the AG's office, 65% of those cases were received in the board office on or after June 1st of 2016.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Because I know Judy was talking about when it was a skeleton staff and now it's grown. Is there still vacancies on staff?
Yes, there are.
How many?
In 2014, July 1 of 2014, we were granted the additional staff. Some of those were limited term. And when those expired at the end of 2 years, we did lose, I think it was a position and a half in enforcement. So we have a total of, is it 7 enforcement staff right now? And right now, at this moment in time, we have 2 vacancies. We had 3 vacancies. We just filled it, a new person started on Monday.
Okay.
So it's not usually like that. We've just been hit particularly hard this quarter.
Is there a time frame when you want to fill those 2 by?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
With respect to one of them, it's already been advertised. The final filing date has passed. At this point in time, all that remains to be done is screening of the interviews or the applications that we've received, which should be a piece of cake. There were only 233. And interviews, and then going through the hiring process. The other position is currently posted.
Okay.
So when that closes, and I'm not sure what the final filing date on that, but it's generally 10 days from when it's posted.
And
So
the
next
process
week.
of interviewing them and sifting through those 234 applications, does that fall on your shoulders, or is it their HR staff that does that specifically for?
No, it's mine.
It's okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was sorry to see Betsy in this. I didn't realize she was leaving. And actually,
Yeah.
Jaspreet, you lost quite a bit of experience, unfortunately.
We have,
Terrific staff.
we lost 3 primary staff analysts at the same
What happens when
time.
you have great people, they get recruited away?
Yeah, that's exactly right. All 3 of them moved on to bigger and better things. So we're happy for them, but sad for us. I should have brought tissue. I should have brought tissue up here. Okay, where are we? Probation monitoring, which is one of our vacant positions. There are currently a total of 94 probationers being monitored. I don't know if I brought, obviously with working through cases, that's something that steadily increases as well. I want to say when I started, we had 40-something, so that was in 2014, we had 40-some probationers, and now we have 94. So that's something that is a considerable workload. With respect to probation monitoring, we do have a vacancy there right now, and we're recruiting for that. However, in the meantime, we have a retired annuitant that's working for us, Catherine Hayes, who comes to the board with tremendous experience and expertise, and she has absolutely been a godsend and has kept me off the ledge many times when it comes to it. And she's focusing on the probation right now because it's important to us that the probationers, that there's continuity of that service, if you will, for them. So she's really been beneficial.
And have any of these probationers fallen off probation? And I guess those would be revocations then that would come before us?
Right. In the statistical report, you can see that there are 4 petitions to revoke currently pending at the AG's office.
4 of the 94 or 4 additional to the 94?
4 of the 94.
Okay. Oh, that's why I don't see it. That's right. Thank you.
Of course. Kind of gotten out of order here, and like I told you earlier, I'm linear, so give me just a moment. I think I've covered the majority of it. Are there any questions with respect to the statistical information for the 16-17 fiscal year?
Sorry, Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, in the category, all applicants pending licensure, that's an applicant who is put on probation?
Those are applicants that are put on probation, but for some reason, they haven't fulfilled all of the statutory and regulatory requirements for licensure as yet. So some of the RVTs that are granted conditional licenses would fall into that category. There may also be others.
Before they get their license?
Mhm. There may also be others that were granted licensure pursuant to a statement of issues that have conditions precedent that they have to satisfy before that. So those individuals, the 22, are not factored into that 94. Those 94 are active cases. So that's above and beyond.
So one of our strategic goals that Amory kind of went over yesterday was that to have a 15% reduction in times. I think it was for a general statement, but have you actually made a calculation of what percent we may be at?
I haven't made a calculation of that. I'm in the process of compiling all of the various years in one chart so that I can take a look at that. But I'll definitely get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I would say Ethan raised the bar with his colorful charts, didn't he?
I know.
But I think
Well,
that would be
these are in
helpful.
color.
Yeah, they are. It's just, I
I'd like your
I
graphs.
appreciate all the statistics, and I think having going back as you're just doing and reading to us, and having that in a chart form is going to be very helpful as we go forward. But also having that the same statistics on number of days would be good too over the last, 6 or 7 years.
Absolutely.
Thank
Shall
you.
we-
Thank you, Candace.
We can still blame the AG's office, right, for the,
No, I'm, in
that.
fact, I'm waiting for my turn.
You know, as always, there are a number of different factors that go into the increased age of the cases. And I can tell you with respect to the cases.
It's just fun to beat up on the AG's. I don't know why, because Diane's in such a good spot.
Well, actually, they've been doing a great job, and they've hired a lot of new people, and it's going very, very well. So with respect to the ones that are aging and are the oldest right now, those are cases that have had one or more continuances, and so the delays with respect to those are more on the respondent side than it is on the board's.
I thought you were talking about aging AGs.
No.
Now.
Cases.
Let's not get personal.
Cases.
Okay, any other questions? Any questions from the public?
Valerie Fenstermaker, CVMA. I was just wondering, on the 1,000 complaints, do those include unlicensed activity? And before Candace was here in the past, we used to receive with the board report a breakdown of how many unlicensed activity complaints you got and how, and if they were being resolved. So I was just, for one, asking if we could request getting that again, and then I also just wanted to know if this includes how this breakdown of the 1,000 comes out.
The 1,000 does include unlicensed activity.
And I saw there's just one little spot here where it says just if they've gone
Right.
beyond the complaint process, but that doesn't really give us a good picture of how unlicensed activity complaints are doing and how they're being handled, and we would just appreciate that being included if possible.
Sure, we can
I
start
think we
doing that.
used to get that with the
We did.
cease and desist.
We did.
Right? It said
It was a chart.
inactivity, and then we got, how many got the cease and desist letter? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've discontinued issuing cease and desist letters because we've been advised by council that we don't have the authority to do that.
So then
we're
what,
not-
oh, I thought that was what you did with unlicensed activity.
It's part of the citation and fine process. There's a preliminary letter that goes out and basically advises that individual that the board's been made aware that their activity could be categorized categorized as the practice of veterinary medicine, we request an explanation from them. If they are in fact practicing unlicensed, then in most cases, a citation and fine is issued.
Oh, that's a little different process, isn't it? Oh.
So could we get a number of how many got a citation and fine?
For the
A cite-
unlicensed?
For the unlicensed?
Yeah, what this report includes are the total number of citations that were issued, but those were not all unlicensed activity, obviously.
Right, thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Nunez.
Do you know how many were approximately, or that's not information you know off?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can tell you just generally, the majority of cite and fine are for unlicensed activity.
How many of these, of the total 1,000 complaints received, how many of them are like completely dismissed? Like the complaint is, he charged me too much.
I don't know that I know the answer to that. If it's solely a complaint alleging that they were overcharged, it would be closed at intake as non-jurisdictional. And we only closed 3 cases at intake last year. So
most of them are pretty
very,
serious.
very small. Most of them, the allegation that there was an overcharge comes with a standard of care complaint as well.
Okay.
So, but are there other categories for non-jurisdictional besides just a complaint about fees? Are there other things that could be non-jurisdictional, correct?
Absolutely. I'm trying to think off my head, top of my head, some of
So,
those things.
Etiquette, whether or not they like the demeanor of the veterinarian, scheduling conflicts, perhaps we've received complaints, obviously, about pricing. The prices are too high. So it's usually those things that are non-jurisdictional. There are some insurance complaints that I've heard that I get emails about that they won't accept that my insurance, or the veterinarian wrote something in the record and now my insurance won't cover this service. Those are non-jurisdictional.
Any other questions?
I wasn't lying. I said I was waiting my turn. So Diane Sokoloff with the Attorney General's Office. The one thing that I just wanted to sort of speak about, and maybe partially for your benefit, but also for Ms. Yanez's, when the gentleman came here yesterday, whose name was Dan Eds, he mentioned and showed a very glaring graph which indicated very high Attorney General's costs that you had incurred.
We noticed that, yes.
And I just wanted to clarify, or maybe even put into perspective a little bit of that, leapfrogging on something that Candace just presented to you, which was an obvious increase in the cases that you have received and sent to the AG's office. And that's, my belief is in part because of the increased staffing that you've been able to have after, what was it, 2014? So that's all connected. And I think it's important just to be aware and just acknowledge the fact that, of course, with more staffing, you have more of an ability to enforce, and your increased enforcement efforts are going to lead to necessarily higher costs. But what would be an interesting comparison is to see, is to kind of make a proportional analysis. Because my feeling or my hope would be that proportionally speaking, the AG's costs haven't increased and possibly have actually decreased, because I think there's higher efficiencies in the AG's abilities to handle cases, even in light of our we also have ebbs and flows in our people who come to work for us. And so there's a learning curve, of course, that everybody has to get. But I think on average, our efficiency levels are very good. So I wanted to mention that because I don't know what the criteria that Mr. Eds used in analyzing the information, but I'm not sure he had the benefit of all of the information that you have in terms of interpreting and analyzing that data. So I just wanted to make sure to speak on that. And then one other thing, just in case there was maybe some confusion, maybe, is that what happens when the AG gets a case and when we file an accusation, and by filing an accusation means the executive officer signs it at the bottom, and then it gets served, and that document it becomes a public document. So that, I believe, at that point is then published on your website. So that's the beginning part of the formal disciplinary process when the AG gets it, and it remains there until the conclusion and after of the process when there's a decision made. So I don't know if there was any confusion there, but I just wanted to make sure that was an answer to your question, that as soon as the accusation is filed and served, it's visible, publicly visible. So.
I have a question, Diane. Years ago, one of the biggest problems that I heard from the AG's office was also hearing dates, right? It took a while to schedule out those hearing dates. Has that gotten better, and if so, why, or are we still in the same place?
I don't know enough about OAH and how it works and if they're staffing. I think it's all about staffing and space.
Me too, yeah.
And so my understanding is that they too had the ability to increase their ALJs, administrative law judges.
They did, or they have the ability to?
They did. I thought they
did.
hired,
Okay.
some number in my head was 14, but I don't know.
And maybe that's why we have greater throughput finally.
That's true, but just that alone doesn't necessarily make
hearing
it, yeah, because you always have opposing counsel or respondents on the other side, and you have to coordinate dates, and there's an interest in respondent side to push and prolong the date for as long as possible, because that ensures their ability to practice. So there's always that tension. There's so many different factors that affect the timing of this. So it's really, I mean, the numbers are great and the comparisons are great, but you always have to kind of analyze that with a grain of salt, because there's so many things that can affect it, like the 2,000-day case, however. Who knows what went on there, but I'm sure there was some rationale, maybe not to rationalize that very long time frame, because I would agree with you that that was a long case.
But I think there was a workflow document that would be great to see, and even to have a comparison. And again, this justifies our existing staff and growing staff. But it seems like one time in the past there was, or at least I know we asked for it, a workflow document that was the beginning and what was the days, and then it hit AG. How long did it sit? And then it went to the next place, how long was it there? And then boom, when did it come to us? Do you remember that? That exists.
Yeah, we generate those. We generate those from the time the AG gets the case.
Right,
And
it's
those,
the whole aging process of a case.
we
kind
call
of
it a
thing.
case aging report.
Right, case aging report. So if we could get that, and I think this helps justify BCPs as well, in comparison over the years and where that time frame is, I think it'll really show how much more work, how much more robust all the departments are, because you've hired more in the AG's office, the ALJs, and how much more work can be done when we get the people we need in every place. And I think that would be very useful for our new members, for our old members to see comparisons. So maybe we could put that on the agenda, the aging report, Anne Marie, would that be possible to get?
So we can talk about what kind of report, there's different aging reports. We get an aging report from the AG's office all the time.
Okay,
But that's not
maybe
gonna
we
show
could
you a
just-
comparison
No,
from
I
different
know.
boards. And to do that, that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work, but you could
So-
just pull it from the past. Doesn't Breeze give you the ability to, or some system give you an ability to pull something from years past?
No, well, at least speaking from the AG's office, this capability, not only the capability, but the actual doing of this and obtaining these reports is newer.
Yeah.
Very newer. And I say newer because it's,
Feel
I don't know how
last
many
few
years.
years or something.
The
We're not-
last several years.
Yeah.
But I have to say, it has assisted.
That would be useful. It would be
So
useful.
Judy, are you talking about from the AG's office? or
No,
are you
no,
talking
from the time,
from our
no, it's a
enforcement? Because I
aging
think this
report
is-
from the time it comes in the door and we sort it
Right.
and then it goes to the next place, the next place, the next place. Because that is how you analyze, how much money, how much time,
Yes, but
where
you-
we're still
so
held
I
up.
think this is what, this report is just in a different format than it's
Yeah.
been before.
Right.
So it's the same report.
Yeah, the information's contained in what Candace has
Yeah.
presented. And I also want to say
It's
this.
not linear though, yeah.
Well, I also want to say that, I've been the liaison to this board, many of you know, for a really long time. I think I don't even know, 14 years,
Forever.
13, 14 years, a long time. And I can attest to you that and no offense to anybody in the past, but the current executive staff and executive officer that you have are hands down spectacular in terms of the running of this board. It's really a pleasure.
We
Yeah.
agree, and I'm not trying to disprove that. I'm trying to help them with more data to ensure those BCPs and more BCPs to come.
Yes, okay, Kathy had a question.
I just was gonna say, Diane, that point wasn't, your point's well taken, and it wasn't lost on me yesterday that the increased success of our operations and our disciplinary activities, which is all in the form of consumer protection, necessitates an increased Attorney General costs. So it is true that these numbers, if you look at the cases that we've been getting over the years, recent years, and then processing, obviously it's going to, and the only way we're doing that well is because of the new staff and the new allocations. And we just need to follow up allocations with additional Attorney General
Right.
costs. But yes, I agree, it's obviously
Yeah, I
tied
mean,
to
it
success.
goes hand in hand,
Right,
so, yeah.
exactly.
Any other questions from the board? Any other questions from the public?
I have one for Candace.
Amy, sorry.
It's just because I don't understand. If you look on your first page of statistics, Candace, you have complaints received for a total for the year 2016-17 is 1,019, right? And then how does that tie into the desk investigations, which is 1,065? So what else gets thrown into the pie there? Does that make sense? If you go down to the assigned desk
Right.
investigations, I'm assuming those are the complaints that are assigned. to
Right, and if
somebody.
you look at the complaints received, it breaks it out by complaints received and convictions received.
Yes.
So the convictions received, obviously, those are complaints in the form of a rap sheet that's come in as a result of an individual being fingerprinted
those
with
are
us.
just kinda
So those are
combined. Okay, got it.
included in that.
Okay,
And those are cases received during that fiscal year.
okay.
The information that you're seeing down here in desk investigations, those are the numbers that are pending at desk investigation at the end of the fiscal year. So it's going to include those, but it's also going to include ones from prior years that are still pending, if that's the case.
So
The
it's
same with
floating.
sworn investigations. So essentially, if they're still in the complaint investigation process, they're either going to be at desk investigation or they're going to be at sworn investigations.
Okay. Just wanting to catch the flow.
Yeah, one's a snapshot in time, in the fiscal year, and then the other is everything currently pending, where it's at in the process. Yeah.
And I realize it's confusing because some of these numbers, and we do this way because this is the way that we report a lot of our information to the department, but some of them are, a total of what's happened over that year, and some of them are representation of where it was at that point in time. So it's confusing. I'd like to say one more thing, and then I promise I'll shut up and sit down. Is that this has been a very, very difficult quarter for a lot of reasons. And one is vacancies. It's difficult when you have almost half of your staff positions vacant. But the staff that is here has done an incredible job, and they have been so accommodating, adjusting schedules, taking on extra workload, those kinds of things. So they should be commended, and I appreciate their diligence and their perseverance. So.
Well, we thank you, and we think you do a great job, so
Thank you.
we appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Only
It's funny that you say that. When Christy hired on with us, you know the situation we were in the end of 2014, and when she first hired with us, at the end of the day, I would tell her, please come back.
But
And she
she'd tell her
said,
that
you know-
every day before she'd leave. Please come back tomorrow.
And she said at first she thought I was joking, and then she realized I really wasn't.
Okay, she,
Mr. says no disciplinary actions,
yes.
just in case you were wondering,
So we will move on to our last report on the hospital inspection program update.
because they protect me.
Good morning.
Yay, you're still with us.
I'm still here. I keep coming back.
We thank you.
Yeah, please, don't leave.
Well, you have my report in front of you, and I just wanted to start out by thanking our inspection staff and the tremendous job that they do, especially lately as we're getting ready for our annual training. And we had a new staff member join us recently, and that's Olisa Johnson. And she she's been with the state for quite a while, but she has background in graphic design and illustration, so we were excited to bring her aboard so she can spruce up some of our presentations and outreach. And we had great plans for her, but she has accepted a promotional opportunity at the state library. Well, she's going to be, I say she's going to be a librarian, but she's not. She's going to the state library in a field that she has been trying to get into for many years. So we're excited for her, and at the same time, we're crushed. But we are going to start our recruiting efforts again for that position. And just with, our other programs, we always have to deal with these vacancies and hiring. So that's part of the job. This year, we're going to have 17 inspectors inspecting for us, and we're excited to welcome back Dr. Robert Hagler from the Contra Costa area. He, for professional reasons, had to leave the program, but we're excited to have him back. And our training is scheduled for next week, and we're going to have a DEA come in and present regarding the use of marijuana and the treatment of animals. That's an area that's going to be coming up. We're seeing it more and more in the field. So we wanted to have DEA come in and talk to the inspectors about that. We're also going to be doing some more outreach, working with the different associations as we get requests for outreach presentations. We will be having our inspectors in the local area present along with someone from headquarters, someone from staff. You see our stats. We were so close to our 20%, but unfortunately, because of the budget issues, we weren't able to. We had to actually suspend the routine inspections in February, unfortunately. So I know, it's so sad, right?
And was that because of our budget or because of the lack of staff?
It was budget.
It was the budget why we had to do it. Oh, that's
Right.
just awful. All right,
It was
thank
very
you.
unfortunate, so we did have to suspend the program, but we're starting a new year. We're looking at 700 inspections for this upcoming fiscal year. I'm really hoping fourth time's a charm, and we'll get to our 700 this fiscal year. We did our inspections assigned were a little bit less than last year, 595 compared to 628 for a 15-16. But I just wanted to point out that as in terms of our complaint-related inspections, we saw an increase in those. So last year we did, or 15-16, we did 40, but last year we did 54. So there's an increase there, even though our routines were suspended, but we still saw an increase in the complaint-related inspections. We remain underfunded, unfortunately, and our expenditures stayed about the same. There was a slight increase there, even though we stopped doing inspections. We've got, again, we still have ride-alongs available for anyone who's interested, for those of you that haven't done a ride-along, and we'll be setting up Ms. Yanez with one in LA, and also Ms. Mancuso. We've got you scheduled, yeah.
In the fall, after October would be good.
Okay.
So we're at the end of the fiscal year, and we're gonna have the money for the 700 coming up now? Or we don't have this money at all? And how do we get the money? Do we have to take from somewhere else, or is it an approved BCP?
So we tried to get the funding. Part of the problem we're struggling with is in the Practice Act, it doesn't say it's mandatory for us to inspect 20% of the hospitals. It says basically we suggest that you do that. And so Department of Finance, when we've gone to them for a budget change proposal request, has said this isn't a mandate. So in SB 546, we asked the committee to include it as a mandate so that we can get the funding for it.
And is that why it died in appropriations?
Probably.
Right, that part is removed.
So you have not started doing routine inspections again and don't know when it's going to start?
No, we'll start again after training. So when do you guys start assigning? At training, right, in August?
Right, our training is next week, and by the end of August, we'll start assigning the routines again.
So we'll proceed as usual and try to hit our 700 mark. What we have to do is month over month, we have to monitor our budget to see where we're falling short and to make sure that we can make those adjustments. Sure. What happened this year is we couldn't pull money from anywhere else because we had really high enforcement costs. So it just depends. Year over year, there's fluctuation. If we don't have other, we had a couple of different contracts this year that were unique. We had one for our audit, for our fee audit. We had a contract for occupational analysis. Those things are not funded year over year, so they come out of just the budget itself.
So if we raise the license fees that we voted on yesterday, when will that go into effect, and will that money help so that we don't run short of this 20% from now on?
So we raise the license fees, and then we'd have to go back and do a BCP, because remember, the fees are revenue. Revenue goes to the fund.
Right.
We don't get to spend it until we go
do the
to
BCP.
Department of Finance and say, we need this money for this purpose.
So are we talking about next May? Are we talking about 2018, 2019? When do we get that money to spend for hospital inspections?
It would be great if we had it in 18-19, because you remember that it takes a year for us to get the regs in.
I
and
do,
then
that's why I'm asking.
With the regulation, we'd write the BCP. So we'd identify the fiscal impact, write the BCP, and move forward.
Well, I would like to see that we take money from something else in the budget to make sure we get to our 20%, and that we expedite these regs to get this BCP going so that we have money for this too. I think that should be a top priority, President Waterhouse and friends.
Oh, believe me, I believe in hospital inspections,
So we have to do something to make it happen.
Kathy?
Do you know, Patty, how many other healing art boards or health boards can't comply with their goal of hospital or premises inspections due to a budget? Are we the only one?
There's only a couple other boards that have an inspection program, and theirs are mainly complaint generated. So they
Okay.
don't usually do any kind of routine inspection. They only go out there if there's an issue.
Oh, okay, so there's not for the
So it's-
docs and
it's
things like that?
tied into their enforcement costs.
Pharmacy has an inspection program that's routine and complaint-driven. I don't have any information about whether or not they've had to restrict investigations, or excuse me, inspections. But I do know in the past, boards have had to discontinue enforcement. And that was the whole reason why there was the budget trailer bill that said, hey, if you get into that bind, you can pull from your fund to support your enforcement efforts, because what good are we if we can't, right? If we can't continue our enforcement program. So from the standpoint of mandate and priority, I hear what you're saying. The routine inspections are important because they're educational. What we don't discontinue, and Patty was clear in her report, are complaint-related inspections. So whether we discontinue routine because of having we don't have room anywhere to pull, we don't discontinue any complaint-related inspections.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, it's the job of our executive officer to move the monies around where the highest priorities are. And I don't think we can or should micromanage that.
Kathy?
Another question. For the inspector training next week, is it possible, if it works for my schedule, for a board member to attend that? Like we've attended expert witness training? If not, I mean, that's fine, I just wondered.
So in the past, board members have attended hospital inspection training, and it is something that we can open to the board. It is not a public meeting, so we could never have a quorum, and in fact, we shouldn't have 3 members of the board there.
Right.
Because it is closed to the public. Again, it's really imperative that our hospital inspectors be able to share their experiences in the field. And that is something that is an open forum of discussion. Opening a meeting like that to the public would completely
Shut it down, yeah. And I wasn't suggesting that.
Right,
but, yeah.
but I just have to be careful
you're right.
because we've had requests for people to attend because there's some pretty interesting topics that we try to address, especially the DEA issue. And while I would love to make those portions available to the public, because the more people that hear the information, the better, we really have to be careful that we don't thwart the importance of the conversations of the inspectors.
Yeah, compromise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which hospitals get inspected is a random generation. Does that include the university hospitals, now that we have university licensures?
Once they have their premises permit, yes.
And we haven't inspected a university yet?
Some schools do have premises permits already, and if they've come up for a random inspection, then they've been inspected. I believe Loma Linda was inspected this past year.
Well, I'd like to say 2 things. Number one, while hospital inspections are educational, we also stumble upon rusty blades and medicine that's been expired for 5 to 10 years. So, I see it as very proactive in protecting consumers and their pets. And that's why, to me, they are mission critical. And then to Dr. Sullivan's point about micromanaging our EO, I think it is for the board to set priorities and what's important to us, and it's for her to execute them. And I don't think by any means I'm trying to micromanage. I'm just saying it is, it's a priority of the board. It should be, and I know it is for her. But I don't want to see these numbers keep sliding. And they can, and they will.
Yeah, I think we all agree that hospital inspection is a huge tool for consumer protection. Sorry. And I'm sure that Anne Marie will do her best to make sure this program goes forward. Dr. Nolan.
This is a bit outside of the box, but it's an idea that has been percolating. Hospital inspections are very proactive in that they're educational. And as we continue to see our numbers of complaints rise, I think it would be very helpful if we could somehow find the time to look at the nature of the complaints and to educate the veterinarians in the premises on what the most common ones are and how they might avoid them.
I can tell you that
Anne Marie came and spoke to our local VMA, and she gave a wonderful talk on, the common problems for complaints, or common problems for non-compliance on hospital inspections.
But
And
what
so-
about the complaints themselves? When consumers call in for complaints that they're not really related to premise, but you're there with a captive audience, and the veterinarians would benefit greatly from having the inspectors be able to say, our top 3 consumer complaints are involved with this or this or this. And I could speculate at that point, but
Okay, so there's 2 things going on here. One, inspectors aren't familiar with the complaints. They're familiar with inspection. It's not that, well, let me complete my answer. It's not that they couldn't be, but that's not their job when they're there. So we need to be very careful that we don't start using the inspectors as consultants or as complaint review experts. We go out and we do talks on the top 10 common violations for hospital inspection. We also do outreach on what to do if you receive a complaint from the board and where do these complaints stem from. And in that presentation, it lists common violations. We talk about situations that tend to generate complaints, high volume practices, emergency clinics, so on and so forth. We do, when we visit veterinary practices on inspection, talk about medical records because that's where the majority of our complaints come from in terms of reviewing records on inspection. So the inspectors are versed in those areas, but they're not involved in the enforcement side. And to train them to do that would probably be more time prohibitive than it would be beneficial because our inspectors don't work in the office, they're out in the field. And so while we may share with them, like we're doing during training, we do share with them what are some of the major policy shifts right now affecting veterinary medicine and that we're seeing perhaps compliance issues in practice, drug compounding, expired drugs, drug storage, failure to register VACSPs. We are communicating those priorities to our inspectors because those are things that they're going to encounter on inspection. General standard of care matters that we see in complaints is such a range of issues, from negligence to incompetence to just a deviation of what the acceptable standard of care is. I really don't know how it would be possible for us to train our inspectors to really communicate that to the veterinarians in practice.
well, what made me think of this is when I went on my inspector ride, the inspector was very good at saying, pull up our website, let me show you exactly where this information is. And if we had a handout or some sort of prepared document that said, here are the top 10 compliance issues, or here are the top issues with record keeping that we're running into this year or something, then we wouldn't have to replicate it, we wouldn't have to train the inspectors, we just have to say, show them this. This is our one shot, a few seconds or minutes where we can say, here's something that might help you out. So that's one way that you could do it that wouldn't require training of your inspectors, and you could develop one document that would be helpful for everyone, and you might update it every year based on what the complaint, history looked like. So that's a thought.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Any questions from the public? Just,
Grant Miller, CVMA. Dr. Nolan, last year the CVMA published an article on the top medical record deficiencies, and that was done in collaboration with the VMB. We published it, but we had them review it to make sure that it was accurate. We also took a stab at the top 10 inspection findings, and that got derailed a few years ago. I think we got sidetracked, so I'll take another look at that and try to dust it off and see if I can get it back over to Patty maybe to take a look at it.
You sure would have a captive audience if the inspector was there at the premise. The veterinarian, I think, would be quite interested at that point and might take the time to look at it closely.
Sure. Well, those resources are available. Anything that we publish in our magazine obviously is available to use, and since the board was involved in writing that article, they're welcome to use at least the medical record deficiency article that we published, and like I said, we'll look at the inspection findings and see if we can help disseminate information that way. Thank you.
Judy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, the last thing was about the DEA coming regarding marijuana usage of animals or whatnot. What is, just tell us what that is a little bit more, what they're going to be doing and talking about.
The DEA is going to be coming in and presenting to our inspectors, and they're basically going to be giving us, their stand, how they stand on the matter, which is it's illegal, and maybe what they're going to have the inspectors look for when they're out in the field and how to handle it.
Wow, interesting.
So questions we might ask, and Patty and her staff were discussing this a little bit yesterday, is, well, how would the federal government deal with a veterinarian who was trying to advise a client because the client was using a medicinal property for their animal? Would the federal government consider it a violation of the DEA license if, in fact, the veterinarian was trying to advise their client accordingly, so for the protection of the pet? And that's one of the kind of ongoing concerns is, and quoted today, the pickle quote was, what if, now I'm going to be known with the pickle quote, is what do we do as veterinarians, our licensing population, they're really in a quandary in terms of they need to be able to take care of that patient with the best of knowledge and with the best of intention. And if in fact there is use of an alternative or medicinal product, they still need to be able to take care of the patient and be able to treat that patient. And that might involve a conversation about what that alternative drug, if you will, how that interacts with other medications that pet may be on, how it may affect the treatment going forward. And those are conversations I think the veterinarian has to have in terms of overall well-being of their patient. And so we really want to get an idea from the DEA as to, their enforcement stance on a veterinarian trying to do their job in dealing with a public that now has access to and a little bit of knowledge out there on that it may be beneficial. So, we're really placing right now the veterinarians in, like I said, a precarious situation, and we want more information from the feds.
Okay, one more thing, I promise. Back to Dr. Miller's point about these articles that have been published. Those would be good for the schools to have, and I don't know if they're there or not. But, this is UC Davis, there's not that many schools. To have the inspection top 10 and the top 10 complaints, let's teach everybody early on. I know they're learning how to be great vets, but let's tell them where the vets falter. So I just thought maybe we need to use all these documents and get them into the schools, get them into the inspections. I think Dr. Nolan's right. It's a great time to just hand it to them. Oh, here's a couple of interesting articles, on how people slip up, and to be as proactive and get this information out, because we have the wealth of data that we're sitting on. So let's get it out to them to help in every way possible. That's all. I'm done.
That's something that we're looking at. We've identified what the top 10 violations are, and so moving forward, what we'd like to do is put something together that we could post on our social media pages, and focus on one violation every month, until we go through the 10. So we're working on it.
And we do go out to Western and UC Davis. Candace and I do it every summer, and we talk to the students about enforcement cases before the board, obviously without divulging anything that's confidential, but we talk about the type of cases that we see and why we see the cases and how to avoid complaint situations through proper communication.
That's wonderful. I hope that you get to every school and do that. UC Davis and Western, that's it, huh? Okay, well.
But there's a lot of other practitioners that don't go to Davis.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was speaking to students. Because Judy's question was about the students.
Okay, thank you very much for all your hard
You're
work.
welcome. Thank you.
So moving on to agenda item number 24, future agenda items and next meeting dates. Oh, sorry, Matt.
Hi, Matt Nishamini from the Department's Budget Office. I just had a comment. This morning, there was a lot of talk about data and statistics and being able to see things, and I think there was even some requests that the board, come up with some statistics. So I would just want to point out that in the governor's budget since 14-15, the board has been required, along with other DCA entities, to report performance-based budgeting in the governor's budget. So that has licensing and enforcement data, enforcement cycle times, enforcement intake times. So a lot of that data is already there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, future agenda items and next meeting dates. The MDC will meet in Fresno on October 17th, and our board will meet the following 2 days on October 18th and 19th. I know, I'm so excited.
And if we can cover future meeting
Yes,
dates?
yes.
Okay, so are requesting a shift in our meeting dates from the typical, we covered this at the MDC yesterday, we covered it today, a shift from our typical January, April, July, October to February, May, August, November. And why we're requesting the shift is because coming off the holidays, January is a really tough month to hold a meeting. We don't get a lot of data. And also, there's times where we don't have a budget to plan for the meeting in July. So it really does help to shift our calendar a month forward. So I would propose, if everyone can make this work, a February 21st, 22nd meeting, May 23rd, 24th, August 22nd, 23rd, November 14th and 15th. So does that create a scheduling conflict for anyone or any other external meetings in shifting those a month forward?
August is for me.
August.
Could you repeat those?
Yes. February 21st, 22nd, May 23rd, 24th, August 22nd, 23rd, November 14th, 15th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we can always move the dates in August.
I would say, Anne Marie, in my case, because the ICVA, meets, it has been meeting January, April, blah, 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 and multiple, this is much easier because I've had to miss meetings they've overlapped a little bit, so from the other vet perspective.
I also know that AVMA meets in July. I think CVMA's board meetings were coinciding with our meetings, so it was just, people were starting to struggle with the scheduling.
I'll probably be out for the February 21st, 22nd, because I'll still be on maternity leave at that time. Okay.
When do we have Dr. Klingborg step away or term out?
So unfortunately, June of 18.
So really that only leaves him
2 meetings.
Okay.
But it would be 2 meetings either way. So even if we did January, April, he would term before July. Yeah.
So, when you go through agenda items for
Sure.
this meeting?
So future agenda items, so we have quite a healthy agenda already for our October meeting. We will be considering drug compounding language as recommended by the MDC. Drug counseling for clients is another regulatory proposal that the MDC has recommended for the board for consideration. RVTs administering sedatives in emergency situations. We will also be talking about a very popular issue, corporate practice of veterinary medicine. I'm sure Tara is extremely thrilled that we're going to be delving into that in October. We have an ICVA report from Kathy Bowler. I've been asked to give a little bit of an overview on the process for denials and reviewing applications. And the existing items that we had, I would ask that we move consideration of pathways for foreign educated RVTs because we still have the ongoing work of the AAVSB and we're on that subcommittee. So we won't have anything to report in October. There was a proposal to include tattooing spay and neutered animals. The DEA facility registration, I think we're gonna have to put that off until 2018. DEA was not available in October to meet with this board, but we'll keep this on our list so we make sure that we get it on an agenda. But it's at the board's discretion as to whether or not we also include that tattooing issue.
I have two questions. Strategic planning, when is that? And updating the strategic plan, and also.
19.
When is it?
2019.
Oh, 2019. And then, what dates did you say were conflict for you?
August.
So we're not gonna do the 22nd, 23rd?
We can look at the following week, and perhaps when we meet in October again, I'll look at those dates on the calendar to make sure we don't have any conflicts in terms of meeting rooms. I can't answer that right now, but we can
Okay.
definitely look at the week following the 20th.
Question. Since tattooing will most likely end up with the MDC anyway, is there a way we can push that off to them rather than including it on our agenda?
You can make assignments to the MDC as a board, that's where they get their assignments. I think we need a little more information. Is it just mandatory tattooing? Is that what we're seeking here?
Where did this come from?
I'm not sure.
It was a public comment.
Oh, it was a public letter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a one-item discussion.
yeah.
I think it's either require it, recommend it, or not do it.
Okay.
You can bring some information.
Is there any reason to have an update on telemedicine nationwide or with regard to vet? I don't know if there would be
Perhaps.
information new regulatory-wise or anything else.
If there is, we'll make sure we include it, seeing what's coming out of the AAVSB. I think we've already moved our language forward to the board. I'm sorry, the telemedicine language will be on the agenda. No, you guys voted on that, so we're okay there. The one I did leave off, the big one I left off, is you asked legal counsel to do some research on cannabis, on marijuana and pets in terms of
please do that
what discussion you can legally have with your client, so marijuana will be back on the agenda.
Dr. Nolan?
Do you want to include the SB 27 update on the antibiotic usage?
Yes, thank you.
About the telemedicine one, I just wanted to point out, I got a email blast here that says New Jersey bill inadvertently permits the remote establishment of VCPRs. So we might, include what's happening in other states with remote VCPRs.
Just an FYI, the latest on that is I believe they're going to exempt veterinarians from that, but that's in the process.
No, this is veterinary.
It's a human bill that included veterinarians, and the discussion over the past few days is whether that is viable or not. Yeah.
I get it.
Any other agenda items?
I just want to close the loop on the tattooing for the spay and neutered animals. Is it something that we're putting on the agenda? I wasn't really clear what we were being asked to do with it.
Did it come from NDC?
No, it came from a public letter.
Comment.
Yeah,
I think
about not knowing.
We have a healthy enough agenda for October. Can we push it to January
We
to at
can,
least figure
to
out what it is
February.
we're supposed
Yeah.
to do? February, yes.
We can.
Good. Any agenda items from the public? Okay. We're done, and we will break for lunch. When we come back, we will be in closed session to go over disciplinary cases. Yes, Dr. Nolan?
Can I ask if we can continue to meet over lunch?
That would be fine with me.
Yep.
Yes.
You most definitely will.
I would like a little time off. I'm done.
I need a bio break.
Huh?
Yeah.